Chapter 28. Mike died just like that. Sato's body was brought back to the camp. No one spoke along the way. There was no joy of completing the mission. Because in order to complete the mission, the entire team suffered too much damage. 21 lives including Mike Day were lost forever. This is a ninja, whether it's victory or defeat, it's paved with blood and lives. Orochimaru looked at the people who came back, asked a little about the situation and left. The indifference that seeped into his bones made people's hearts turn cold. About half a month later, the three countries that were fighting Woodleaf all proposed to surrender and negotiate peace. After that, the top leaders of Woodleaf and the Fire Country's government decided to divide the interests of the other three countries and so on. She no longer had anything to do with Nangongja, who had no status. Nangongja just followed the army back to Woodleaf. A lot of people gathered at the gate of Woodleaf, including children and women. They were looking forward to the return of their families. But most of them only got an urn and many of them didn't even get an urn. They only got a letter from their family. Nangong Ro was also in the crowd, worried and uneasy, afraid that she would get the same bad news as many people around her. And I said, you must come back safely. The Rocks ninjas were the first to enter Konoha's village. There was almost no meat grinder in the Rock ninjas battlefield. Everything went smoothly, so everyone was basically full of energy. But the eyes of the team that lost their comrades were full of tears, moving forward silently. Among them was Kakashi, who had lost his father and his best friend. His eyes were somewhat empty and he now only had one eye. Several Uchiha ninjas were tightly staring at Kakashi. After the Rock ninjas completely entered, they took Kakashi away without paying attention to the eyes of the crowd. Watergate saw Kakashi being taken away and followed. Presumably it was because of the Sharingan? After that, it was the Sand ninjas. The Sand ninjas should have lost a lot of people. But Tsunade was the commander. Most of the medical ninjas trained by Tsunade also followed her to the sand battlefield, so the ninja casualties were not very high. The higher-ups of the ninja village must have seen such a result and made up their minds to develop the training of medical ninjas. However, the few people who knew Tsunade's plan looked bitter. Woodleaf's Princess G's medical ninjutsu level was so high that it was simply unheard of since ancient times. After she left, Woodleaf's medical ninjutsu could be considered to have fallen. However, the higher-ups should have reached an agreement with Tsunade. Tsunade will at least leave a training plan to assist Woodleaf in training medical ninjas. The last ones to enter were the Mist ninjas, who had suffered the most casualties. The Blood Mist also caused great pain to the Woodleaf. Compared to the time of the expedition, the number of people in the entire army was reduced by almost half, and those who returned alive were almost all injured. Disabled ninjas with missing arms and legs account for a large proportion of them. The cheers of the two troops when they entered the village instantly stopped. Only sorrowful cries could be heard. Dad! Dad! The young Kai rushed to the front of the procession and wept bitterly to Sato Kami, one of his father's few friends. You are Guy. Nangongja walked to Guy's side and said, Your father is a great ninja. In the end he was so handsome. He will be the one we will remember for the rest of our lives. He is the hero of Woodleaf. I know. My dad will be so handsome in the end. Guy's tears and snot were still hanging on his face, but he desperately squeezed out a bright smile and gave Nangongja a thumbs up. If you don't mind, I am also a taijutsu ninja. I can help you train. You can find me later. Nangongja saw Guy's appearance and his heart throbbed. He unconsciously made a promise. Guy, promise him. This person is very powerful and he earned the title of Yama on the battlefield. I'm sure he can teach you. Sato said. Yes. I will definitely become a great ninja and make Dad proud of me. Guy turned to Nangongja and bowed deeply. Sensei. Okay, then I will be your sensei. Go back. I will look for you later. Nangongja replied softly and comforted at Kai to go back. Yes, sensei. Guy turned and left, but Nangongja seemed to hear Guy's cries. The cries didn't disappear, but became louder and louder in Nangongja's ears and in Nangongja's mind. All the troops were assembled and Sandame also gave a speech. Nangongja didn't listen to a single word. He just kept silent. Oniai-san. Nangongja went home after finishing a bunch of trivial matters. Nangong-ro came up and hugged Nangongja. Oniai-san. I was so scared every day when you were gone. I was scared that an umbu would suddenly come to my house and send me letters that I didn't want to see. People have been receiving these letters for the past few days. Many of my classmates have also lost their loved ones. I was so scared. Nangong-ro cried loudly. Nangongja even felt that his chest was wet from Nangong-ro's tears. Ro. Nangongja rubbed his sister's head and said, "I'm back." Nangong-ro raised her head and looked at Nangongja's face. "Welcome back, Oni-san." Nangongja slept at home for a long time, and when he woke up he found that he had slept for 2 days and 2 nights. He could only make use of the time to put on a morning robe and walk to the Woodleaf's memorial tablet with his sister. He reached out his hand and caressed the cold names on it. White Fang Senpai, Mike Senpai, and the many ninjas who fought with me. Although your bodies have disappeared, your appearance and your persistence are still remembered by us who are still alive. You have never disappeared. Heroes never disappear, it's just that their bodies rot. May your spirits in heaven bless the Woodleaf. May you have the opportunity to be born into a stable generation and live an ordinary life. Nangongja said and couldn't hold back the tears in his eyes. His legs went soft and he sat in front of the memorial tablet. He cried and wailed. Nangong-ro looked at Nangongja and just silently walked forward and hugged Nangongja's trembling body. The heroes fell into eternal sleep. But will this ninja world really be peaceful because of their blood and sacrifice? No one knew. Everyone was just working hard and looking forward to it. Perhaps one day, there would really be someone who could turn the tide and save the entire world. It's just that these people will never be seen again. Chapter 29. This year, Nangongja was 14 years old. He experienced exile, settling down, and the Third Shinobi World War. Even if his experiences continued to accumulate, the souls and blood in his hands continued to deepen. But it still couldn't change the fact that Nangongja was still a teenager. Some things can't be changed by age. Therefore, Nangongja cried and wailed in front of the Soul Consolation Monument. Finally, Nangongja was tired of crying and he didn't want to cry anymore. He stretched out his hand to wipe the remaining tears from the corners of his eyes and stood up. He looked at his sister who had been hugging him. "I made you worry. I don't know why, but my heart suddenly collapsed." "No." Nangong-ro also stood up and looked at Nangongja. "I know what Oni-san is facing. So many familiar faces have disappeared, including White Fang Senpai who helped us a lot. If Oni-san really doesn't have any emotional fluctuations, then something is wrong." Nangong-ro stood in front of Nangongja, stood on tiptoe, hugged Nangongja's head and slowly stroked it. "With Ruru here, Oni-san doesn't need to pretend or suppress. You just have to be yourself." Nangongja never thought that his sister would say such words. In his impression, although his sister was sensible, sometimes she was very willful, just like a child who hadn't grown up. But at this moment, Nangong-ro made Nangongja feel that she had grown up. "I'm sure you've been through a lot while I was gone, right?" Nangongja didn't say anything. He stretched out his hand and took Nangong-ro's hand and walked to the residence. After a few days, Sato took Guy to Nangongja's house. "Hello, Sato Jounin and Guy." Seeing the two standing at the door, Nangongja quickly greeted them. "Xiao-ro, prepare some refreshments. We have guests." Nangongja shouted. After hearing Nangong-ro's response, he led the two of them to the living room. "Sato, did you bring Kai here because of what I promised you before?" Nangongja remembered that he had promised Kai to teach him physical skills when he returned to the village. He immediately understood why the two of them had come together. "Big brother, who are these two?" Before Sato could say anything, Nangong-ro came out of the inner hall with a tea tray. There was a pot of tea, a few teacups, and a few plates of pastries. Speaking of which, I haven't introduced him to you yet. This is Jonin Sato, a senpai who fought alongside me." "Hello, Jonin Sato." Nangong-ro bowed slightly. "As for this one, she's the child of someone I admire. His father didn't come back, so I promised to teach him physical skills. His name is Michael Kai." Nangongja turned around and looked at Kai. "Hello, Kai-kun." Although Nangong-ro was a little speechless, she didn't say anything. She still smiled sweetly and said hello to Kai. "Just call me Guy." Guy seemed to be shy and hurriedly said, "Then you guys talk, I'm going to tidy up the house." Nangong-ro felt that she couldn't talk to them anymore, so she left. "Let's continue, Jonin Sato." Nangongja saw his sister leave, so he talked to Sato about what happened just now. "Yes, we did come to let Nangong teach Guy." Sato told Nangongja the reason for his visit. "I will definitely teach Guy, after all, I promised him. I'm going to take a long vacation in a few days, so I hope I can take Guy with me. But I don't know if Guy's instructor will agree." Nangongja expressed his doubts with a bit of embarrassment on his face. Woodleaf's instructor has a lot of control over the genin. And teaching someone else's student without the instructor's permission is very hateful. So Nangongja has to be cautious. "That's not a problem." Hearing Nangong Zetsu's doubts, Sato suddenly smiled. After this great shinobi war, Konoha reorganized the genin squads because of the severe losses. Most of the teams have changed their instructors. Now I'm Guy's instructor, so if you want to train Guy, you can arrange it. That's fine. When I'm ready to leave, I'll inform Guy. Good. After a few words, Guy and Sato left. Seeing them leave, Nangong-ro walked to Nangong's side. Oniai-san, are you sure you want to be Guy's teacher? Some of our secret techniques can't be taught. Before Nangong-ro finished her words, Nangongja interrupted her. Don't worry, Oniai-san knows what to do. Guy's father is a great ninja and a great father. I just promised to help him train, not to accept him as an apprentice. Don't worry. Oniai-san, it's good that you know what to do. Nangong-ro nodded and then said, Oniai-san, did you just say that you want to go out of the village to train? Yeah. What's wrong? Nangongja was a little confused. Can you take me with you? Nangong-ro looked at Nangongja with hope in her eyes. Maybe you can't go with me. I'm mainly training strength and endurance. If it's technical training, it may be useful for a ninjutsu ninja like you, but if it's purely physical training, you can't do it for the time being. Guy can do it? Nangong-ro looked puzzled. Guy's family has a problem with their physique, they can't practice ninjutsu or genjutsu. So Guy has been training taijutsu since he can remember. His physical foundation is extremely solid, and he has reached the level of training with me. Now he only lacks skills and the accumulation of time. Since Oniai-san said so, then I won't go. Nangong-ro was also a reasonable girl. And the ninja school is about to start. Although Nangong-ro can ask for leave to train, it is better to have a solid foundation in the ninja school. By the way, Oniai-san, do you remember Yabuki-san from the clothing store? Of course, what's wrong? It seems that Yabuki-san is going to get married in a few days with a chunin surnamed Haruno. Is that so? Then let's go and congratulate her. After all, Yabuki took care of us when we first came to Woodleaf. Then should we take a stroll on the streets and find some gifts to send over? Nangong-ro's eyes flashed with a hint of craftiness. Let's go. Knowing that his sister wanted to go shopping with him, Nangongja didn't say much and agreed. The moon was bright and the lights were on. The bustling commercial streets seemed to be isolated from the pain caused by the war. The two strolled for a long time, bought a lot of things and went home. Chapter 30. The next day, Nangongja and Nangong-ro went out early to help out at Mahabaki's house. The two of them were very familiar with Mahabaki, so they were considered her family. Nangong-jun and Mio-chan are both here? Seeing that Nangongja and Nangong-ro were both here, Mahabaki was very happy. Yabuki-san, congratulations on your marriage. Mahabaki, congratulations on your marriage. The two of them congratulated Mahabaki at the same time. Thank you, it's my fortune to meet Haruno-kun. Haruno-kun was injured on the battlefield, so he'll be teaching at Woodleaf from now on. Maybe he'll even become your teacher. Is that so? That's great. I'll be going out to train for a while, so I won't be able to take Ruru with me. Since Haruno-kun is a teacher at Woodleaf School, please take care of him for me. Of course, I also see Mio-chan as a sister. That's right. Nangongja took out a beautiful gift box from behind him. This is a gift from me and Ruru. Can I open it? Mahabaki took the gift box with a happy expression. Of course, it was originally a gift for you. Nangongja said with a smile. Then I won't be polite. Mahabaki opened the gift box, revealing a beautiful hairpin decorated with cherry blossoms. It's so beautiful. Thank you so much. Of course not, Mahabaki. You took care of us when we first came to Woodleaf, so it's only right that we give you this gift. After a while, the groom, Chunin Haruno, also came out to greet Nangong and Ruru. Nangongja carefully observed him and found that he still didn't have any impression of this Haruno-kun. Perhaps he was the most ordinary Chunin? This Chunin Haruno seemed to have suffered some damage to his meridians, so he casually retired and came to the ninja school to teach. But it was good. If Mahabaki married a powerful teacher, then it would be torturous for her to live in fear every day. On the day of the wedding, Nangongja and his sister had a lot of fun. But happiness was always short-lived. Nangongja finally applied for a training vacation, which was half a year. After notifying Guy, the two went to Woodleaf School together. Since Nangong-ro was in school today, Nangongja did not ask his sister to send him off. After all, he was just going out. Guy, have you been doing weight training? Nangongja and Kai were chatting on the way. Sensei. Kai said to Nangongja excitedly, 200 pounds? Nangongja looked at Guy's relaxed appearance. Increase the weight tomorrow to 300 pounds. When you feel you're used to it, continue to increase. Yes, sensei. Guy replied. But sensei, what about you? How much weight are you carrying? Sensei didn't use lead or anything like that to carry the weight. Nangongja shook his head. I used the earth release, heavy rock talisman. Every day I injected internal force and adjusted the gravity to carry the weight. Now, it's about 3 times the gravity, right? 3 times? Guy was dumbfounded. Forget it. I knew you wouldn't understand. Nangongja knew that he couldn't explain it to Guy, so he took out a few talismans from the lining of his clothes and put them in Guy's hand. Stick them on your jacket. These should be about 1.5 times the gravity. Oh. After taking the talismans, Guy stuck the talismans on the inside of his clothes. With a thud, Akai's whole body fell to the ground. This is 1.5 times? Guy said with difficulty. When Nangongja saw Guy like this, he reached into Guy's clothes and tore off the talismans. For the time being, it's better for you not to carry the weight. Continue to use the compressed lead to carry the weight. When your physical strength grows in the future, I'll ask someone to make a few talismans for you. Thank you, Sensei Nangong. Sure enough, only this kind of life is youthful. Guy gave a thumbs up, revealing a bright white fang. Behind him, there seemed to be waves hitting a boulder. Nangongja looked at this scene and couldn't help but regret. I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse to let such a person train with me. The Guy and Nangongja finally arrived at the first training location selected by Nangongja, a Woodleaf Waterfall, which was the huge waterfall in the Valley of the End. Looking at the huge water flowing down, Guy was dumbfounded. Sensei Nangong, are we going to train under such a waterfall? Yes. Nangongja smiled naughtily. It can't really be here. If this is Sensei's choice, then I'll do it. Guy began to get hot-blooded again. Nangongja hit Guy's head with a karate chop. Are you an idiot? This is where I cultivate. Can you still find anyone there? Nangongja pointed to a much smaller waterfall and said, This is your training place. Go. Today, no matter if it's eating, sleeping, or training, you have to do it under this waterfall. If you get washed down, you have to train for an extra hour. Understood, Sensei. Looking at Guy excitedly walking towards his waterfall, Nangongja began to tidy up his clothes, put on his jacket and shoes, and took the black sword to the bottom of the waterfall. The huge impact swept Nangongja's body. The black sword almost flew out of his hand, and he was about to lose his balance. Hold on. Change the center of gravity. Maintain the balance. After a long time, under the guidance of Li Yang's voice, Nangongja was finally able to stand firmly under the waterfall. Nangongja tried to swing his sword. The power of the waterfall poured onto the sword, bringing great pressure to Nangongja's wrist. Hack, stab, flick, wipe, chop. A few basic sword techniques were demonstrated by Nangongja one by one. Slowly, Nangongja's speed became faster and faster. The basic sword techniques also slowly changed to the fatal 13 swords that his sister gave him. As time passed, Nangongja's body was tired and his mind was tense. Finally, Nangongja slipped and fell into the river. Fortunately, Guy noticed the abnormality and pulled Nangongja out. Otherwise, his life would have been in danger. After Nangongja woke up, he ignored his fatigue and walked to the bottom of the waterfall. Nangongja was forcing himself to break through his limits. Not only was it a physical limit, but it was also a mental limit. Guy looked at Nangongja's crazy appearance and his heart was moved. He also started to practice crazily. Both of them were exhausted after every training session, but neither of them complained. They just worked hard to practice. Chapter 31. On this day, Nangongja was still practicing his swordsmanship under the waterfall. This was Nangongja's second month of practicing swordsmanship under the waterfall. Every time Nangongja practiced swordsmanship, he relied purely on his physical strength and did not use his internal strength. This helped Nangongja to better control the application of his strength. In these 2 months, Nangongja had completely mastered the fatal 13 swords and integrated it into every move he performed. Although he had lost the form, he understood its meaning. It was incomparably sharp and the sword could not be retracted. This so-called fatal 13 swords, every sword was a sword that took a life. If it was not the life of the opponent, then it would be worth it to pay with one's own life. Nangongja's purpose of practicing swordsmanship under the waterfall was to train his speed, strength, and stability. To ensure that every sword was delivered with the most appropriate strength, it would save energy and increase his ability to fight continuously. Today was the day Nangongja decided to leave the waterfall and head to the next training location. Nangongja's training plan for Akai was basically completed, and his own strength training had reached a bottleneck. If he wanted to break through, he would need more accumulation and opportunity. Today, Nangongja was prepared to use his internal strength to fight against the power of the natural waterfall. Akai, it's good that you're here. Don't get too close. Nangongja brought Akai a little further away, enough to see the waterfall without being accidentally injured. Seeing that the waterfall was 300 to 400 meters away, Akai was stunned. Was his teacher so strong that he could affect so far away? Akai, you should know. Fighting with the heavens is endless fun. Fighting with the earth is endless fun. Fighting with people is endless fun. In this life, I don't care about fighting. If you can truly master this word and put it into practice in your own life, you will be able to understand it. I believe you will benefit a lot. Today, teacher, let's fight this earth waterfall first. Nangongja held his sword and went to the waterfall. This time, Nangongja did not suppress his inner strength. Instead, he allowed it to spread out. This was one of the rare times when Nangongja pushed his inner strength to the limit. Vigorous internal energy flowed around his body, like blue fire lotuses burning. The surrounding water vapor and water droplets were forced to stay away by the surging inner energy. Nangongja's black clothes were not stained by even a single drop of water. The black sword seemed to be encouraged by its master's current demeanor. It clanged and trembled slightly. A faint blue halo instantly covered the sword. Unlike before, his inner strength was not contained and not released. Instead, it went in the opposite direction, constantly surging, steaming and releasing his own power. The long sword was like a coat of fire. Every time it was swung, it left a faint mark in the air. Waterfall, waterfall, you and I have been together for so long. It is time for me to show you my power. I've lost a lot of face after being beaten into the water by you time and time again. Today, let me use all my strength to kill you. Nangongja's eyes suddenly sharpened. The vigorous sword energy seemed to be shooting out from his eyes. Nangongja was now a long sword. After being hammered by the waterfall, it was finally washed clean and sharp. As long as he was willing, he could even slash the sky. Every move of the sword energy surged. Every time he swung his sword, there was no return. At the bottom of the waterfall, Nangongja used all the power he could to use this sword technique. The gushing water turned into puffs of water mist and dissipated in all directions. Finally, the sword moves accumulated one after another until they reached the peak of their power. Slash. Nangongja did not say anything. He only used his heart to slash. A huge amount of inner strength gushed out from the direction of the sword. The huge waterfall was instantly divided into two parts. Even the part of the waterfall near Nangongja followed the sword energy and went against the flow, straight into the sky. This guy looked at this scene and was shocked speechless. Although he knew that his sensei was very powerful and was once regarded as the successor of Woodleaf White Fang, he did not expect that pure taijutsu would be so strong. One had to know that although White Fang was strong, he was strong in assassination. A real head-on fight is extremely disadvantageous for a ninja who is proficient in taijutsu. The enemy's ninjutsu attack is very long range and the power is also very strong. But what about a taijutsu ninja? It's just a punch, a kick, or an extra weapon. Even if it's the longest weapon, how can it have a longer range than a ninjutsu attack? So most of the time, taijutsu ninjas are used as meat shields to entangle strong opponents. Among the famous ninjas in the ninja world, there are almost no taijutsu ninjas. Even Reikage is proficient in taijutsu, which is the combination of ninjutsu and taijutsu. So Nangongja's performance at this moment made Guy more confident about the development of his taijutsu in the future. Because even if it's only taijutsu, a taijutsu ninja can be very strong. Not to mention that Guy's father left him an extremely strong forbidden technique, Hashiman Tanku. Nangongja was also very happy when he saw the scene that he had created, because these 2 months had not been wasted. The internal force in his body can finally be condensed like a blade. His internal force has reached the next level, and he can really compete with those elite ninjas. Leaving the waterfall, he went to Guy who was blasted with water on his face. How is it? What do you think? Look, I split the waterfall. It's really incredible. A taijutsu ninja can be so strong. That's natural. No matter what kind of path it is, as long as you can persevere and firmly go down, you will not be disappointed in the end. Guy, you and I are actually about the same age. We are young. Young people should have the hot-bloodedness and arrogance that young people should have. Only in this way can you not waste time. You and I still have a lot of time. This is our capital, we must not waste it easily. We should go all out, temper ourselves and make ourselves stronger. Ah, you hot-bloodedness. Guy will listen to Sensei's teachings. Good. Let's do 500 frog jumps first. Guy turned around and went to frog jump. Nangongja was very clear about Guy's character. After all, they have been together for a long time. Nangongja said those words on purpose. Because Guy is really talented and hard-working. But what a taijutsu ninja needs is not hard work, but desperation. Only by desperately breaking through your own limits can you make long-term progress. This is Nangongja's view of taijutsu ninja. If the attack range is not enough, then I rely on speed to make up for it. If the power is not enough, then I temper my strength to the extreme. As long as there is a way to make up for it, even if it is difficult, it is meaningful. Chapter 32. In the blink of an eye, I'm going to graduate from the Ninja Academy? Nangong-ro looked at the falling cherry blossoms outside the window and felt an inexplicable feeling in her heart. Her brother said that he was going out to train, but he didn't take her with him. At first he said that he was going to train for half a year and would come back after half a year. But it was delayed again and again. It's been almost a year now, right? Although they often wrote letters, Nangong-ro really hoped that her brother could come back and witness the scene of her officially becoming a ninja. But she still didn't receive any news from her brother. She didn't know if her brother could come back in time or if he wouldn't come back. On the podium, her homeroom teacher, Haruno Chunin, who was also Machi's husband, was announcing the class allocation of each student. Nangong-ro. Haruno Chunin finally called out Nangong-ro's name. Yes. Nangong-ro raised her right hand. Nangong-ro, because you signed up for the medical ninja sequence, you won't be assigned to any other team, but will be an intern at Kiba Hospital. Nangong-ro's instructor will be specially assigned and will come to pick you up later. Haruno Chunin said. That's right, Nangong-ro specially applied for the medical ninja sequence of Woodleaf medical ninja experiments. Every medical ninja who signed up won't be assigned to a ninja squad, but all of them will be put into Kiba Hospital for professional training. In terms of combat power, there will be special ninjas to train them. Nangong-ro didn't have a lot of chakra, so she didn't have much potential to develop on the path of ninjutsu. And her physical fitness wasn't very good either. So she could only be a medical ninja or a genjutsu ninja who specializes in spiritual power. The most popular medical ninja mode in the ninja world is a combination of genjutsu and medical ninjutsu. While forming combat power, it also takes into account the high spiritual power requirement of medical ninjutsu. Yes. In fact, Nangong-ro already knew that she would make such an arrangement. After all, she was very familiar with Yabuki-san. If Chunin Haruno knew about it, wouldn't that mean that Nangong-ro also knew about it? Speaking of sprouts, he had to mention it. After Yabuki-san and Haruno Chunin got married, she got pregnant very quickly. Forget it, it would only be a few days before she gives birth. Nangong-ro might have to take care of Yabuki for a few days while she was studying in Kiba Hospital. Good. The teacher finished explaining the grouping of the class. Everyone was a group of ninjas after the Shinobi World War. They were the new blood of Woodleaf Village. I hope that no matter what happens, everyone can work hard to improve themselves and protect their own lives. To become a qualified and excellent ninja. Chunin Haruno bowed deeply. The whole class was originally mischievous, but now all the children were crying and clapping with tears and snot on their faces as they watched Haruno Chunin walk out of the classroom. After that, the teams were taken away one by one. Nangong-ro looked at the people who were taken away and didn't think much about it. There weren't many people who chose to become medical ninjas, not to mention that she applied to be a full-time medical ninja. There was almost no combat power. Such an existence sounded good, but almost no parents would allow their children to go in such a direction. There was no other reason, it was too easy to die. Medical ninjas were always the first to be attacked in a battle. His battle prowess was also shockingly low. Why was Tsunade so famous in the shinobi world? Was there really no medical ninja more talented and excellent than Tsunade? There was no doubt that there was, but these medical ninjas were drowned in the history of the shinobi world. Because they weren't strong enough, they were fragile instruments destined to be abandoned after their value was squeezed out. A medical ninja who understood the hidden dangers of your body, as well as various drug resistance and medication status. It was like holding a ninja's life, and no ninja would allow such a threat to exist. Therefore only Tsunade could be famous. Because before everyone praises her as a great medical ninja, everyone will always remember her as Konoha's super strength Haim, such a name that relied on strength to fight for her. Time flew by and after a while. When Nangong-ro regained her senses, she was the only one left in the classroom. A breeze blew and a few cherry blossom petals fell on Nangong Ro's long black hair, but Nangong Ro still didn't know. A pair of hands appeared on Nangong Ro's black hair, and a few petals were flicked off for her. You've obviously grown up, but you still don't pay attention to your image at all. I haven't seen you for a year, but you haven't grown much, Ruru. Hearing the familiar voice, Nangong Ro slowly put the kunai in her right hand into the backpack behind her waist. Oni-san. Nangong Ro was surprised at first, but then she stretched out her hands and fiercely pinched Nangong's ears. You still know to come back? You've been out with Guy for so long, and you still know that I'm at Woodleaf? Ouch. Nangong Ro's strength was beyond Nangong's expectations. It was simply too much, and Nangong could only cry out in pain. Seeing Nangong like this, Nangong Ro's heart suddenly softened. What's wrong? Did I hurt you? Oni-san. Nangong suddenly had a sneaky smile on his face. How could I? Right. Being pinched by my beautiful sister. There aren't many people in the ninja school who have this kind of treatment. It's okay, we can pinch if we want. Let those little brats see that the cold princess in their eyes is just a cute little girl here. Although Nangong hadn't been at Woodleaf for a long time, he still had a lot of news about Woodleaf. Perhaps Nangong Ro didn't like to play with these kids who were younger than her by 1 or 2 years. She was also quite pretty, so there were a lot of suitors. Nangong Ro didn't have any reason to. That's why she got the strange nickname of Woodleaf's Ice Princess. Hearing Nangong mention such a shameful thing, Nangong Ro knew that Nangong must also know about that strange nickname. She also turned her head angrily and ignored Nangong. Okay, Nangong rubbed his sister's head and said, let's talk about business. Woodleaf Genin Nangong Ro was assigned to Kiba Hospital, and her instructor is Nangong. You don't have to wait, we can go. Oni-san is going to be my instructor? Nangong Ro was surprised. Yes, but I'm only responsible for teaching you some self-defense techniques. The specific medical ninjutsu will be taught by a Woodleaf doctor. Nangong nodded. Why aren't we going? You haven't been back for so long. Oni-san is missing my family's food. Oni-san is a big glutton. Nangong Ro suddenly smiled sweetly, bent her finger and scratched Nangong's nose and quickly ran away. Chapter 33. Nangong hasn't returned to Woodleaf Village for nearly a year. Although Nangong heard about the major events that happened during this period, he still missed them. Among them, Yabuki's marriage, Kakashi's joining of the Umbu, and the succession of the 4th Hokage. Of course, there may be more hidden news, and Nangong will slowly learn about it. Ro, is breakfast ready? Aren't we going to see Yabuki? After Nangong got up and washed, he walked to the living room and didn't see Nangong Ro, so he called out. But for a long time, Nangong didn't see Nangong Ro's response. Looking around, he found a piece of paper on the low table. He picked it up and looked at it. It was Nangong Ro who was called by the people of Kiba Hospital in the morning. He didn't make breakfast and wrote a note to Nangong to explain. Nangong really didn't know how to cook. Nangong could only go to the street to see if there was a breakfast shop or something. But Nangong left the village for a long time, and he rarely ate outside. Almost all the food was cooked by Nangong Ro. With no choice, Nangong could only walk slowly on the street with an empty stomach. Walking around, he actually slipped to the door of Yabuki's clothing store. Looking at the store that was still open, Nangong thought about it and went in. Yabuki? Nangong tried to call out. Nangong Jun. Nangong suddenly exclaimed behind him. Nangong looked back. It was Yabuki with a big belly and 2 big plastic bags in her hands. Where's Chunin Haruno? Why did he let you go out to buy things with a big belly so early in the morning? Nangong looked at Yabuki and stepped forward to take the bags in her hands. Seeing that Chunin Haruno wasn't there, he asked. Don't mention it. Isn't that guy a teacher at the ninja school? It's time for the graduates to hand over their files. There are a lot of freshmen who have started to sign up, and he's been busy these days. Anyway, I have nothing to do. It's okay to go out to buy some food or something. Yabuki's words sounded like complaints, but she couldn't hide the smile on her face. Her whole person was exuded a happy radiance. Then, when I see Chunin Haruno, I have to talk to him. Is more important your wife and daughter? Yayab Yabuki said Yabuki's words. Wife? S. Why do you think he is a girl as a daughter? Yabuki looked. S. I don't know either. I just have this kind of intuition. Yabuki, your child will definitely be a strong and powerful woman like you. When the time comes, if you trust me, I can be the child's master and teach him well. Nangong said seriously. Although Yabuki wasn't a ninja, Nangongja had been with her for a long time. Although he didn't say anything about Yabuki's strong and powerful personality, he appreciated it very much. That depends on what she wants. If she wants to be a ninja, then I'll leave it to you, Nangongjun. After all, Nangongjun is one of the famous woodleaf ninjas. Yabuki laughed. Alright. I forgot about business. Nangongja suddenly slapped his head. What's wrong? Yabuki asked. I haven't eaten breakfast yet. How about it, Yabuki, let me have a meal here. Nangongja rubbed his hands and looked at Yabuki. Yabuki reached out and patted Nangongja's head. Let's go. It must be because your sister didn't cook for you. I can guess. Nangongja and Yabuki had such a relationship, just like a pair of siblings. Nangongja was very concerned about this girl who cared about him like an older sister. Yabuki also took care of this young man who was like a younger brother. There were no other strange things mixed in. After eating breakfast at Yabuki's house and chatting with Yabuki about his experiences outside, Nangongja left. After all, Yabuki was close to giving birth and she still needed to rest. Nangongja left Yabuki's house and didn't go anywhere else. Instead, he went to Kiba Hospital. Nangongro actually came into contact with a certain amount of medical ninja knowledge when she was in ninja school. She also learned some basic things. Therefore, Nangongro began living medical experiments after arriving at Kiba Hospital. The most famous one was waking up fishes that were in suspended animation. Looking at Nangongro's serious face, Nangongja also smiled. Just as Nangongja watched his sister seriously studying, a figure appeared behind Nangongja. A slap landed on Nangongja's back, making Nangongja stagger. Nangongja was wondering why he suddenly didn't pay attention to his surroundings. When he turned his head, he saw a red-haired figure. Sorry? You are? Nangongja didn't know the person in front of him, so he could only ask. Me? The woman opposite him pointed at her nose and looked at Nangongja with a surprised face. You don't know me? Sorry, I'm not a ninja who lived in Woodleaf since I was young. I joined Woodleaf for only a few years. Most of the time, I was out on missions or training, so I really don't know many people from Woodleaf. Okay. The woman smiled and said frankly, my name is Uzumaki Shina Kushina. I'm temporarily in charge of Kiba Hospital. Uzumaki Shina Kushina? Nangongja thought about the name and suddenly looked surprised. Woodleaf blood red pepper? Shina Kushina slapped Nangongja's head. You're the pepper. Your whole family is pepper. Sorry. Nangongja suddenly remembered that Shina Kushina didn't like people calling her this nickname. Nangongja even shouted it out, so he quickly apologized. Then you're Watergate Senpai, 4th Hokage's wife? Shina Kushina suddenly blushed. Although almost everyone in Woodleaf knew about her in Watergate, suddenly hearing it from someone else still made Shina Kushina shy. After looking at Nangongja, she turned to look at Nangongro. She's your sister? Seeing that Shina Kushina started to talk about business, Nangongja also became serious. Yes, she's my sister. What's wrong? Nangongja was a little confused. Today your sister came here for basic learning, and we found that her spiritual power is very high. This is an excellent condition for learning medical ninjutsu and genjutsu. It's very likely that she will be the next medical ninjutsu after Tsunade-sama in Woodleaf. Shina Kushina said with a serious face. I see, so what's the purpose of you looking for me? You're your sister's instructor, so I hope you won't be soft-hearted. You should be stricter with your sister. People like her are the most likely to die young. I hope you can train her. Let her live a better life. Of course. She's my most precious sister. Chapter 34. After leaving Kiba Hospital, Nangongja returned home. Since Nangongja was Nangongro's mentor, he wasn't given many missions and none of them were far from the Woodleaf. Nangongja's days could be said to be leisurely and carefree. However, it wasn't easy either. Nangongja had been haunted by a strange dream recently. Those dreams seemed to be memories of his childhood. There was a father, a mother, and himself, living a very ordinary and simple life. His father worked in the fields and his mother took care of things at home. Everything was very natural and warm. But what was missing? That's right. His younger sister and the grandfather in his memory were not in his dream. Nangongja didn't say anything to his sister, but he felt very uneasy. An ominous premonition slowly enveloped his entire body. Pa. Nangongja was drinking tea, and the teacup in his hand shattered on the short table. What's wrong, brother? Nangongro saw Nangongja's expression and quickly took a cloth to wipe the boiling hot tea on the table. Even though the boiling hot tea flowed on Nangongja's hands, Nangongja seemed to have turned a deaf ear to it, and he seemed to be in a trance. No. Nothing? Nangongja took the cloth from his sister's hand, wiped his hands carelessly, stood up and returned to his room. He took out the black sword that never left his side and looked at it. The irritation in his heart became heavier, and he casually threw the black sword in his hand to the side. Liang, Nangongja said. What's wrong? Liang saw Nangongja ask her and she stopped silent. You and I have the same soul, so you should have noticed my dreams these few days, right? Nangongja closed his eyes and immersed himself in his own spiritual space, and he saw the huge figure of Liang. You mean those memories? Liang said with some surprise. Memories? Nangongja suddenly felt a sharp pain in his heart. Those are my memories? Yes, those are the memories in the depths of your mind. I don't know why, but your memories seem to be blocked by some kind of power. A large part of your memories are wrapped in it. These days, your cultivation has made great progress in your body and spiritual power, so your spiritual power seems to have begun to attack the power that sealed your memories. Your so-called dreams are actually just a small part of your sealed memories. Li's explanation very casually, she even snorted from time to time. But Nangongja was different. At this moment, Nangongja didn't know how to describe his feelings. He quickly left the spiritual space as if he was running away, and closed his communication with Liang. He hugged his knees and sat in the corner, his body was still trembling. The next day, Nangongja went out early and went to the mission hall to receive a remote escort mission and left the Woodleaf. After Nangongro woke up, she didn't see Nangongja. Nangongja also had some thoughts in his mind. Is it memories? Other than that, Nangongro really couldn't think of any other reason that could force her brother who cared about her to do this. At this moment, Nangongro didn't know how to face Nangongja, because the hidden things were not as simple as memories. There were all kinds of things involved, and it might even make Nangongja unable to continue being a Woodleaf ninja. Whatever, two people who didn't want to face reality were trying their best to escape. Maybe time will give them a proper attitude to face each other? Or maybe they'll be speechless. Who knew what would happen at this point? When Nangongja left the Woodleaf, he was in a hurry to receive a mission that would allow him to leave the Woodleaf as soon as possible, so he didn't carefully look at the details of the mission. Because most of the escort missions were B-rank or D-rank missions. For Nangongja, it wasn't difficult, but Nangongja didn't think that he would accept such a troublesome mission. The mission client was an artist who seemed to be quite famous in the Fire Country. The mission was to escort her to various countries to collect paintings. That's right, it was her, a female artist. Nangongja went to a small town near the Woodleaf and found his client, Xinghuan's real name. Hello, are you Miss Xinghuan? Although Nangongja wasn't in a good mood, a professional ninja couldn't let his bad mood affect his mission, so Nangongja still politely knocked on the door of the hotel, wanting to see his client. After a long time, there was no response, so Nangongja could only open the door himself with his own skills. That's right, skills. When he opened the door, he saw his client. When he opened the door, Nangongja was stunned because this room was really, too messy. The whole room was filled with all kinds of clothes and bags of snacks. Nangongja looked around, but he couldn't find where his employer was hiding. But soon Nangongja was stunned, because of a huge oil painting on the wall in front of him. A blue sky with some purple clouds, a tender green grass, a thin river embedded in the grass, a few horses galloping on the grass, and a child holding a whip standing on a small hill. Nangongja had seen similar scenes before, but he had never seen such a beautiful scene. Woo, a soft groan came from under the pile of clothes, and after a while, the whole mountain of clothes was pulled open from the middle, and a girl came out from it. The young girl had a head of brilliant golden hair and deep red eyes. Her delicate and pretty face constantly displayed the charm of a young girl. But her sleepy face and the saliva on the corner of her mouth ruined the picture. Miss Xinghuan? Nangongja tried to call out. Whoa. The girl rubbed her eyes and seemed to wake up a little and asked, Mister, are you a pervert? Why are you in my room so early in the morning? When faced with such a question, Nangongja only wanted to say that his sad mood had been fed to the dogs. I'm a Woodleaf ninja that you hired to protect you when you go to various countries to gather information. As for being a pervert, please believe in my professional integrity. Woodleaf? Ninja? Seems like there is such a thing. When I first gave you the mission, your people insisted that I pay more, saying that it's too dangerous, and that it's an A-rank mission. No one has accepted it, and it's been almost a month now, right? The girl knocked on her head and tried hard to recall, with an adorable look on her face. Indeed, now was not the best time to travel. Chapter 35. Now is indeed not a good time to travel around the ninja world. It's true that the shinobi war has been over for more than a year. But the impact of the war is indeed far-reaching and lasting. Putting aside all kinds of dirty tricks between countries, just the various kinds of troubles among the people were enough to annoy people to no end. There were countless bandit lairs of various sizes scattered around the borders of large countries and small countries. Nan Gongja carefully observed Mishiro, who was standing in front of him, and found that this girl didn't have any traces of cultivation. In other words, she has no ability to protect herself. Such a silly-looking girl, he didn't know what kind of parents let her carry out such a dangerous plan. So, Shinjo-san, where is our first stop? Nan Gongja didn't want to ask what Mishiro's parents were thinking, because ninjas and their employers generally don't have too much contact with each other. Nan Gongja has seen more than once that the target of the assassination was his former employer. Ninjas don't need to trust each other because the next time they meet, their employer's weapon will be on their body. Oh. When Mishiro heard Nan Gongja's question, she suddenly seemed to be stumped and fell into contemplation. So, this girl didn't even decide on the destination, but she already gave him an A-level mission that cost so much money? Nan Gongja's state at the moment was simply Spartan. Nan Gongja has been a ninja for so long, but this is the first time he encountered such an employer with an unknown purpose. You first pack my things. The girl thought for a long time and finally gave an order. Nan Gongja was confused. So, this wasn't a delivery mission but a babysitting mission? Moreover, Nan Gongja was very embarrassed at the moment, because after Mishiro climbed out of the pile of clothes, there were a lot of women's underwear, including Mishiro, who was only wearing a loose t-shirt. As for the inside? Nan Gongja didn't see anything. As if she felt Nan Gongja's gaze, Mishiro looked at Nan Gongja. What's wrong? Are you curious about this place? Mishiro immediately prepared to lift the hem of her t-shirt to let Nan Gongja see clearly. No, not at all. Nan Gongja hurriedly pulled Mishiro's hand, not letting her lift her clothes. The bold and unrestrained Mishiro, who had clearly wanted to take off her clothes just a moment ago, had her hand grabbed by Seiji, and her face instantly turned red. The flustered Nan Gongja naturally didn't see this scene. At this moment he was only hurriedly looking for a suitcase and folding all sorts of girls' clothes in it. What's your name? Seeing Nan Gongja's busy figure, Mishiro suddenly asked. Me? I'm a woodleaf jonin, my name is Nan Gongja. Nan Gongja casually replied. Gong gong. Gong gong? Why don't you call yourself a eunuch? Nan Gongja ridiculed in his heart, but he didn't say it out loud. You can call me Nan Gongjun or Jijun or just Nan Gongja. Don't you think it's not good to call me Gong Gong? Okay, Gong Gong. I say. Are you listening to anyone at all? No problem, Gong Gong. Nan Gongja was immediately driven mad. He compromised as well. This girl is really like a nemesis, she doesn't listen to people at all. Suddenly, Nan Gongja felt a shadow above him, and it fell into his hand. T-shirt? This color, this pattern, this temperature, can't be? Nan Gongja turned around. Sure enough. Mishiro was standing behind Nan Gongja completely naked. One must know that even if it was his sister, Nan Gongja had never seen her naked. Now he actually saw it in this kind of situation. This is really lucky. Ah no, unlucky. Jinjin. Jinjin. Mishiro? What are you doing? Taking a shower? Do you need to wear clothes when taking a shower? Mishiro answered Nan Gongja's question with an innocent face, but at this moment, Mishiro was completely exposed in Nan Gongja's eyes. Yes, that's right, there was no holy light, no smoke and no mosaic. So, Nan Gongja unfortunately fainted. Perhaps it was because this scene was too exciting for a pure and innocent young man? When Nan Gongja woke up again, it was already dusk. He was lying on a soft bed, and when he turned his head, he saw Mishiro lying on the side of the bed, asleep. The sun shone through the window, bringing warmth and gentleness, and sprinkled on Mishiro's long blonde hair. Nan Gongja was stunned for a moment. However, he couldn't help but think of his own sister, Nan Gongro. Nan Gongja had taken care of his sister for so long, and his sister's obedience and quirkiness were things that Nan Gongja liked. There was no doubt about that. However, if there were other things mixed in, then the impact on Nan Gongja would be too great. Are you crying? Mishiro opened her eyes and saw that there were 2 lines of tears running down her cheeks as she asked. Nan Gongja touched his face, and found that there were indeed a few strands of tears. I recently encountered some things that I should face, but I can't do it. That's why I accepted this mission with a long time limit. I want to calm my heart. Nangongja didn't know why, but when faced with the question of her real name, she really said it out loud. Perhaps this was the magical power of this young girl? She could make people who had a lot on their mind let down their guard and start talking. Unhappy? Why would you be unhappy? Mishiro blinked her eyes. Mishiro feels that everyone should be happy. When your heart is beating, when your breath is continuing, when your eyes can see colors, when your nose can smell fragrance, when your mouth can taste, when your ears can hear every note. At this time, people should be happy. Because you are still alive, all the temporary unhappiness will be washed away by the state of being alive. As long as you are alive, you should feel happy. Mishiro, Nangongja looked at the young girl, and at this moment, his heart was filled with mixed feelings. Nangongja actually couldn't find anything wrong with what this young girl, who he had only known for half a day, said. The world was originally fine, but people worried about nothing. Since his memories were sealed, it meant that there were some things that others didn't want him to know. Although he didn't know if the seal was related to his sister and grandfather, how could his sister's feelings be fake? Why did he have to think so much? He was torturing himself and his sister. Nangongja's mood at this moment was a lot better, and a smile appeared on his face. Gong Gong, you look good when you smile. Chapter 36. Looking at the sky full of sand, Nangongja lifted the scarf on his face. He turned his head and looked at Mishiro with a bitter face. How is it? The legendary land of wind, is it the scene of the Gobi Desert? Nangongja's voice at the moment can be said to be incomparably joking. When Mishiro suddenly proposed to come to the land of wind, Nangongja knew that it was definitely not good. Most of the land of wind is covered by desert, and only a small area has an oasis. However, even the vicinity of the oasis was not so safe, because they still had to face the constant assault of the sandstorm. Back then, when Nangongja fought here, he had suffered enough. The sand ninjas are very familiar with the sandstorm, and their defense is very adequate. Many times, the sand ninjas will start to attack the Woodleaf camp during the sandstorm. Originally, the Woodleaf ninjas were slightly better, but how can the Woodleaf ninjas who can't open their eyes fight against the sand ninjas? Moreover, many of the Woodleaf ninjas were directly swept away by the sandstorm. The scene of the sandstorm covering the sky, in Nangongja's eyes, even the most powerful ninjutsu is not a match for it. But from the Woodleaf ninjas who are stationed at the border, sometimes there is a more terrible sandstorm in the hinterland of the land of wind. It is said that when the sandstorm passes through, a huge sand mountain will be piled up, and a large layer of the land will be directly shaved off. Therefore, the sand ninjas rely on a huge defensive barrier and a high wall to block the sandstorm. Cough. Mishiro just wanted to speak, but a gust of wind poured sand into her mouth. Bah! How did I know it would be like this? How long will it take to reach the oasis? Now. Nangongja looked at the surrounding environment and the sun covered by the sandstorm. If we hurry, maybe we can reach Kikyo City before sunset. It's a big city where the fire country and the wind country trade. The surrounding scenery is also unique to the wind country. Are you trying to persuade me to hurry up and go somewhere else? When Mishiro heard Nangongja's words, she was instantly unhappy. Her eyes were wide open and her lips were curled up as if she was about to hang an oil bottle. Nangongja looked at Mishiro and walked to Mishiro. Reaching out his hand, he patted the sand on Mishiro's hair and said, "Look at you now, do you look like someone who can bear the hardships of the wind country? Moreover, the desert terrain is changeable and there are often sandstorms. Not to mention us, even the sand ninjas would get lost if they stayed in the desert for too long. I am the ninja you hired to protect you. I am responsible for your safety." Looking at Nangongja's serious look, Mishiro suddenly stopped talking. She just turned her head to the side and muttered, "Gong Gong is so stingy. What kind of hearing does Nangongja have?" Of course he heard the muttering, but he didn't care. He smiled and put his large cloak on Mishiro's body. "I asked you to pick a coat with a hat, but you said it was too hot. Now you look like you're covered in dust. I gave you my coat, but don't go to Kikyo City. If people see you, they will think that I dug you out from the soil." Mishiro turned around and looked at Nangongja and said, "Who can dig out such a cute little girl from the soil?" "You said you are cute?" Nangongja looked at Mishiro and was speechless. After reaching the desert, the wind was very strong and there was a lack of water. Therefore, both of them had an unnatural redness on their faces, and all kinds of dead skin appeared. In addition, Nangongja just threw his coat on Mishiro's body, and there were a lot of numbers. Mishiro now looked like a big dumpling. It was hard to associate him with cute and cute. Mishiro looked at Nangong's expression and then looked at his own body. He walked forward and stepped on Nangong's foot. Then he walked away. What are you doing? Nangongja cried out in pain. Didn't you want us to leave quickly? Mishiro said without turning his head. But what? Hurry up. You went the wrong way. Mishiro turned around and continued walking without any expression. Nangongja looked at Mishiro's direction and was speechless. It's still the wrong way. Mishiro suddenly walked behind Nangongja and kicked Nangongja's butt. Then why aren't you leading the way? Mishiro roared. Okay, follow me. Nangongja could only get up from the sand and prepare to leave. However, Nangongja said, So, Mishiro, you have no sense of direction? Mishiro looked at Nangongja. No matter how he looked at this face, it was infuriating. Hence he kicked Nangongja's face and said, Go to hell, bastard. Nangongja never thought that there would be a day when he would be so open with someone. All along, Nangongja had been trying his best to maintain his image. He was polite and respectful to others, honest to his friends, responsible for his missions, and took care of his sister. However, there was never a time when Nangongja indulged himself like this. He let himself become so talkative, so thick-skinned, and so shameless. Nangongja didn't understand and didn't want to understand. In fact, everyone was like this. Sometimes, when we were facing others, we would unconsciously add a lot of requirements to ourselves. We have to be polite, serious, and respectful. Although this was good for a person's life, it often made people lose themselves easily. It made him wonder why he was always living with a mask on his face. But that wasn't the case. Every side of every person was their own. However, she should also find someone who could let her be free. Perhaps to Nangongja, Mishiro was such a person? Even if the two of them hadn't known each other for a long time. Even if the two of them were just employees. Even if the two of them had been quarreling non-stop. This was a feeling that Nangongja had never experienced before. At this moment, Nangongja's body's internal energy was rotating a lot faster. Nangongja also felt a lot more comfortable. This kid has grown up. Li Yang muttered to himself when he noticed the changes in Nangongja's body. Inner strength could not only be strengthened through daily training and accumulation. At the same time, it also required a lot of mental strength. If a person's mind was clear, then the flow of his internal energy would become a lot smoother. This was the so-called state of mind. Without a good state of mind, no matter how much power one had, it was just a paper tiger that could be easily defeated. Chapter 37. Looking at the tall walls of Kikyo City, even the calm Nangongja couldn't help but relax a little. In fact, the distance between the Fire Country and Kikyo City wasn't that far, but Nangongja couldn't walk in a straight line. In a straight line, there were countless desert dangers such as quicksand, and there were no supply points. However, Nangongja was still fine. With his physical strength and endurance, he could endure it for a while. He didn't need to waste so much time. But Mishiro was different, although Mishiro's stamina was better than ordinary people. But compared to a ninja, it was still insufficient. After all, a ninja was a weapon that was trained to adapt to all kinds of harsh environments. It wasn't something that ordinary people could understand. How strong can a ninja's will to survive be? Nangongja saw with his own eyes that an enemy ninja was stabbed with no less than 10 bloody holes, and the blood flowing out was enough to dye the ground under his feet red. However, such an enemy was able to kill more than a dozen of Konoha's genin before dying of exhaustion. This was a ninja. Miyagi, is this Kikyo City? Mishiro followed and saw the magnificent city in front of him. He sighed and interrupted Nangongja's thoughts. It's so big. In the Fire Country, except for some magnificent cities in the capital, there weren't any big cities in other towns. It was the same in other countries because in this era, the ninjas were the main means of invasion, and they couldn't be stopped by ordinary walls. And the high walls that could stop the ninjas and chakra were expensive to build, so most of the places didn't have such walls. This Kikyo City was originally jointly funded by the Fire Country and the Wind Country, and the two countries had an agreement that they wouldn't start a war in this city. Nangongja looked at the majestic city and sighed, but every time the Fire Country and the Wind Country went to war, this place would become a huge meat grinder. Because of its excellent defense against ninjas, it was almost a place that both sides would fight for, and it was used to store armaments. This is a meat grinder? Mishiro was surprised. That's right. Nangongja nodded and continued, although I don't know the specifics of World War II, I was one of the first to join the Sand Ninjas in World War III. I have experienced the seesaw attack in defense here. Both sides suffered heavy losses in that battle. Woodleaf lost at least 300 ninjas here, and the Sand ninjas had more casualties because of the lack of medical ninjas. We can't get the exact data, but it's at least above 500. After hearing Nangong's explanation, Mishiro fell silent. In fact, the two of them had also encountered bandits and robbers along the way. Mishiro had seen how Nangongja dealt with these people. Even though Nangongja had tried his best to use the least bloody method, he still tried his best to avoid Mishiro. However, it was inevitable that Mishiro would bump into him a few times. Even to this day, Mishiro could still remember that scene clearly. However, those were just a few robbers. At most, there were 5 or 6 of them, and they could cause such a tragic scene. Not to mention that Nangongja said that there were nearly 800 or 900 people. And this is just the number of deaths. The number of injured will only increase. Well? Seeing Mishiro's mood was a little low, Nangongja patted her head. These things are over, and there will be a day of peace and stability in the future. This is what we ninjas have always been thinking about. Well? Mishiro nodded and didn't say anything. The two of them walked to the gate of Kikyo City, handed over their ID, and entered the city. Looking at the bustling scene here, Mishiro's sadness seemed to be diluted a lot. Looking at Mishiro running around the streets, Nangongja finally smiled. In fact, before entering the city, Nangongja looked at Mishiro's expression. He already had some guesses. How old is Mishiro? But she can make the decision to travel to various countries like this. Nangongja believed that no matter what kind of parents they are, they wouldn't allow their child to do such a thing without the ability to protect themselves. Even when they set off, no one came to see them off. This can only prove that Mishiro's parents may not be alive. And what is the most likely reason for the death of a ninja's parents? So Mishiro wasn't just sad about the death of so many people, but more likely she was sad about the death of her family. Of course, all of this is Nangongja's guess and it can't be confirmed. But it also made Nangongja's heart more sympathetic. His experience of surviving in Woodleaf's small town was still vivid in his mind. How difficult it is for a child without power to survive in such a chaotic world. Nangong and his sister did it. Mishiro also did it. The hardships they went through are not worth mentioning. The two strolled around for a while and then hurriedly went to find a hotel to stay. Even though the security in Kikyo City was excellent, it was still very dangerous. But Nangongja, as a hired ninja who has to protect Mishiro, still has to keep watch for Mishiro. Ninjas can quickly enter a deep sleep, and in a deep sleep for 30 to 40 minutes, they can even go without sleep for a week under special circumstances. So Nangongja will keep watch for Mishiro every night. The moon was especially bright that night. There was not a single cloud in the thousands of miles of sky. Only the bright moonlight and a little bit of starlight dotted the black curtain of the night sky. The two's hotel is not far from the downtown area, and they can see the bright lights outside when they open the window. Mishiro brought an easel, a drawing board, and a lot of brushes and paints from her room. Slowly she began to paint. At this moment, Mishiro seemed especially pious and holy. It was as if what she was facing was not just a drawing board, but the whole bright world. Her eyes were shining brightly. If a comparison had to be made, the current Mishiro was like Nangongja when he was obsessed with swordsmanship. A light breeze blew, bringing a bit of coolness to Nangongja, dispersing the scorching heat of the desert. Nangongja unknowingly fell asleep on the roof opposite Mishiro. When Nangongja opened her eyes again, the east of the sky was already turning white. Nangongja scratched his head. Since the end of the war, his vigilance has decreased. He can actually do something that can make him fall asleep at night. But Nangongja also knows that he is only in a light sleep, and will definitely react if there is any disturbance. But it is not good, so he secretly noted it down to warn himself. Looking down, Mishiro's drawing board from last night is still on the balcony. Curious, she jumped down to take a look. Chapter 38. Nangongja was a little surprised when he saw what was drawn on the painting. Nangongja felt that last night's moonlight, stars, and bustling streets were exceptionally beautiful. However, Mishiro had drawn the scene of last night with a heavenly aura. The dense smoke and fire were hidden behind the heavenly aura. It formed a different kind of beauty. What made Nangongja feel even more amused was that Mishiro seemed to have realized that he was keeping watch on the roof of the opposite house. She had actually drawn Nangongja in the painting. This girl? Nangongja looked at Mishiro's vivid painting of him sleeping and shook his head. Interesting. He turned his head and looked at Mishiro, who was sprawled out in her sleep. Nangongja did not say anything and disappeared in a flash. When Mishiro woke up, it was already past 11 o'clock. The blazing sun shone through the window onto Mishiro's body. This was a desert area. Even if it was the holidays, the air conditioning here was excellent. It wouldn't be of much use at noon. Mishiro could only moan under the unbearable heat and opened her sleepy eyes. After all, she had stayed up late to paint last night. Yo, you're awake. Mishiro had just woken up. Her consciousness was still blurry. When she heard someone greeting her, she subconsciously replied, "Morning." However, she immediately felt that something was wrong. She was in a hotel. A single room. The voice that greeted her was a man. An earth-shattering scream rang out. Mishiro picked up the pillow under her and threw it at Nangongja, who was sitting under the bed. "Are you a pervert? You came to a girl's room early in the morning. What are you trying to do? What are you trying to do?" To be honest, Nangongja had never thought that a girl's attack would be so powerful. He was a Jounin-level ninja, but he was actually beaten silly by a girl who had never trained before. Was she trying to beat an old driver to death with random punches? Something strange seemed to have sneaked in. Anyway, that was what it meant. Nangongja, who was chased out of the room, did not know what to say. Did I do something wrong? Actually, Nangongja went downstairs to buy breakfast and bring it over to Mishiro. However, Mishiro did not wake up. Nangongja went downstairs and asked for the room key. He was prepared to leave the breakfast and leave. But when she saw that Mishiro had woken up, she subconsciously greeted her. Then, it was a tragedy. "Listen to me, Mishiro. I'm just here to deliver breakfast. I don't want anything else." Nangongja hastily explained. "What else do you want?" Another pillow was through. "I didn't mean that. You calm down. Breakfast is on the table." Nangongja thought for a while. Mishiro was angry now. Mishiro would not listen to anything he said. It would be better for him to leave first and let Junbai calm down so that he could explain himself. "Get lost." Mishiro shouted in the room and there was no more movement. Nangongja could only leave slowly. Mishiro looked at the breakfast on the table. She did not know why, but she blushed. "At least you have some snacks." Nangongja came out of the hotel. He did not know what to do and started to wander around. After all, Nangongja did not know much about the local customs other than coming here during the war. After all, the war had started. How many people could live and work in peace in the city? Just as Nangongja was wandering around, he suddenly heard a commotion in front of him. A lot of people gathered together. "Hurry up and give me the money. This is our boss's territory." A person who was obviously a hoodlum was shouting at the boss of a shop. Nangongja took a look and whispered to the onlookers beside him to ask what was going on. "It seems like you are not a local." The onlookers looked at Nangongja as if they didn't know anything and said, "This is a protection fee." Although this Kikyo city is a border trade city jointly established by the Fire Country and the Wind Country, the two countries don't really care about it. Actually, the two countries don't think highly of merchants. The status of merchants is also very low. The finances of the big countries are mainly determined by the taxes collected from the farmers. Although the country also collects taxes from merchants, many big merchants are very resistant. The military power of the daimyo is not strong. The ninja villages all want the merchants to be rich. That way they can get enough commission. The daimyo do not have enough power, and those who have enough power deliberately condone. This leads to all kinds of chaos in the market here and even more commercial cities. That hoodlum is from the #1 gang in Kikyo City. This boss is being taught a lesson because he borrowed money from the loan sharks and owes them protection fees. In fact, Nangongja wasn't very sensitive to business or politics. However, after listening to the description of the bystanders, he felt that the current environment had reached a strange balance. Only by breaking this balance can the business and maybe other industries recover their vitality. Even Nangongja understood. How can the big people not understand? Although the meat eaters are despicable, it does not mean that they are brainless. There may be more secrets that Nangongja did not know. Just as Nangongja was listening to the people's analysis, the situation escalated. The hoodlum took out a knife and put it on the boss's neck. If you can't pay, then think about what you can pay. If you can't pay, then you can pay with your cheap life." Just as the hoodlum was about to take out the knife, a hand grabbed his wrist. "Little brother, this is a bit too much." The person who grabbed the hoodlum's hand was naturally Nangongja. In fact, Nangongja did not want to help. If you borrowed money from a high-risk loan shark, then you should be prepared to be exploited. You only have yourself to blame. But it was a bit too much to take someone's life so easily. Who do you think you are? You dare to meddle in my business? Here I am the law, I am the rule. This kid did not follow the rules, so he should be punished. The hoodlum looked at Nangongja, who grabbed his wrist. The huge strength made the hoodlum feel a little guilty. Although his words were still arrogant, he had restrained himself a lot. Little brother, we are all here to make a living. Give me some face. This boss must know his mistake. As long as this shop is here, there will be a chance to pay back. It is not wise to kill the goose that lays the golden eggs. Isn't it demeaning to kill someone within 7 steps? Nangongja did not plan to make a move and spoke nicely to the hoodlum. But his sharp eyes were staring at the hoodlum, which made the hoodlum shiver. He could only put down the knife in his hand and run away. Chapter 39. To Nangongja, the dispute between the hooligan and the vendor was nothing more than a trivial matter. After all, it didn't involve ninjas. Nangongja started his stroll again under the complicated gazes of the onlookers. However, after walking around for a while, he still felt that there was nothing special about Kikyo City. After all, Kikyo City was a commercial city. They were mainly receiving merchants who were coming and going. The status of merchants in this era meant that the standard of living and the level of culture here was just average. He looked up at the sky. The sun was about to set. Well? Nangongja nodded. Mashiro should have calmed down by now, right? Let's go back and see her. Nangongja was about to return to the hotel when he saw a shop selling octopus balls. Nangongja thought about it and decided to bring some food for Mashiro. After all, he only brought her breakfast. With Mashiro's character, she probably didn't even eat lunch. She should be starving now. Bringing some food could be considered as atonement and asking for forgiveness, right? With the steaming octopus balls, Nangongja quickly rushed to the rooftops on both sides of the street and moved quickly to the hotel he was staying in. When he reached Mashiro's room, he learned his lesson in the morning. Nangongja knocked on the door to make sure that Mashiro could receive him. Mashiro? Can I come in? I brought you delicious food. There was no movement in the room. Nangongja was a little nervous. Mashiro? There was still no movement. Nangongja knew that things might have changed, so he didn't go downstairs to open the door with the key. Then he kicked the door open. The room was very messy and there were obvious signs of a struggle. Kidnapping? Nangongja tried to suppress his excitement. Although he only spent a short time with Mashiro, Nangongja liked Mashiro's character and personality. How could such a person be treated in such a manner under his watch? Self-blame and anger intertwined and lingered in Nangongja's heart. Nangongja ran downstairs and stared straight at the hotel owner. This hotel wasn't a big one, and there was only one exit in front of the door. This proved that as long as the murderer was an ordinary person, there was an 80% chance that he or she went out from the door. Mashiro's room was messy enough to prove the murderer's strength. It was definitely not a ninja. Otherwise, the room wouldn't be in such a mess. What do you want? Nangongja's stare sent shivers down the owner's spine. Nangongja took out his Konoha shinobi headband from his arms. Boss, you should know this, right? Nangongja waved the forehead protector in his hand. If you know this, you should know that I'm a woodleaf ninja. The girl who stayed with me is my employer. Even if you haven't seen her before, you should be able to imagine what kind of methods a ninja will use to ensure the completion rate of their missions. After Nangongja finished speaking, he took out the black armor from his back. The sword stabbed into the side of the innkeeper's neck, forcing the innkeeper to lean against the wall. The boss was extremely nervous and cold sweat kept coming out of his forehead. A few large beads of sweat slid down the black sword, and when they slid down the blade, there was a trace of blood. This scene scared the boss even more. However, anyone who could survive in Kikyo City and even open a hotel had a certain level of quality. After the initial fear, the boss slowly came back to his senses. Nangongja wouldn't kill him just like that because no matter how chaotic Kikyo City was, it was still a matter of a group of ordinary people. If a ninja with high combat power personally came to cause trouble, the two countries wouldn't just sit back and watch. The boss reached out his short and thick fingers and pressed on Nangongja's sword. Ninja-sama, please listen to me. The innkeeper regained his composure and said calmly, "Of course I know who kidnapped the young lady. However, this group of people can be said to be unscrupulous in Kikyo City. If I tell you, how can I live in peace?" Nangongja was still a young man, and his heart was still kind and compassionate. After hearing the boss's words, he understood. The boss was innocent. He was stuck between himself and the culprit, and he didn't know what to do. "You tell me where the culprit went and I'll take care of it. I won't let you have any worries." Nangongja was anxious to save the young lady, so he said such a condition. I naturally believe in Ninja-sama's strength. I will have my servant take you to the hall of that group of people. The boss turned around and called for a servant who was cleaning the backyard. After giving the order, he asked the servant to bring Nangongja away. Looking at Nangongja's back, the boss's mouth almost reached his ears. That was the #1 gang in Kikyo City. Although such a colossal existence was strong, how could it be a match for an expert like Nangongja? The boss had seen many people, and he could tell a person's strength from their spirit. In the boss's eyes, Nangongja was probably as strong as an elite Chunin. Genin could fight against 10 people, Chunin could fight against 100 people, Jonin could fight against 1,000 people, and Kagetir could laugh at 10,000 people. The people here were not ordinary people, but the most elite soldiers of each country. Nangongja could at least fight against 100 people, so this kind of gamble was worth it. Nangongja was quickly led by the servant to a large warehouse surrounded by lights. Nangongja knew this warehouse. It was where Woodleaf stored strategic materials. After the war between Woodleaf and the Sand, the things here were removed. It should be because of this that it fell into the hands of the so-called #1 gang in Kikyo City. This had an advantage because Nangongja was familiar with the terrain. Thus, many battles could be realized. How could Nangongja not want to fight his way in? That would be so satisfying. However, Mishiro was still in the hands of the other party. If something happened to him, then Mishiro's life would be in great danger. This was the most important point. Nangongja once listened to White Fang's orders and received guidance from White Fang. His assassination skills were also very solid. Facing such a group of people with low strength, he could handle it with ease. After making up his mind, Nangongja pulled out his black sword. He lowered his breath, making his breath very weak, and slowly approached the various guard points in the warehouse. This night, the sword light was dim, but it took many lives. Chapter 40. This warehouse was originally occupied by Woodleaf ninjas during the war with Sand ninjas. Although Nangongja wasn't a ninja guarding this place, he was still a jonin. He knew some of the information that he should know. This warehouse was modified by Woodleaf ninjas. Nangongja didn't remember all of them, but he was very familiar with the key points. Ninjas were existences that walked in the shadows. The so-called Shinobi World War was just a strategy to compete for benefits between countries. Letting a group of assassins fight head-on was something that they would only do if they had no other choice. After all, compared to ninjas, ordinary soldiers were really useless. Because of this, each country only kept a small number of guards to guard their houses and walls. The soldiers who were really used in the war had long been eliminated. As Nangongja continued to harvest the lives of the gang members, the distribution of the people in this stronghold was also a little clearer. Sure enough, Nangongja didn't expect it to happen. The gang leaders were now basically gathered in a secret room that was specially built to store important materials. Even a cunning rabbit has 3 holes, let alone a ninja. This secret room happened to be one of the few secret rooms that Nangongja knew about. Nangongja quickly cleaned up the gangsters guarding the warehouse. After all, the difference in strength was too big. Nangongja entered the secret passage and reached the end of the secret passage in 2 or 3 minutes. Nangongja didn't rush out. He leaned on the partition and listened to the conversation in the secret room. "Fourth brother. You're confused." An old voice sounded. "Big brother, I know I was impulsive. But who knew that kid was actually a ninja? Woodleaf ninjas. You said I've tied him up. It could be said that he had offended all of them. My life is now in danger, what else can I do?" This so-called fourth brother, Nangongja heard his voice and knew that he was the gangster he stopped during the day. For such a person to be ranked fourth, he had no idea how this gang had managed to get to their current position. "Fourth brother, it's already like this. We can only find a way to solve it." The boss said, his tone was very heavy and a bit gloomy. "This girl is the most important bargaining chip for your life. A ninja with a girl with no cultivation, 9 times out of 10, this girl is the employer or the target of protection. Ninjas don't care about anything, but they will never easily fail the task they take on. Treat the girl well, it's best if you can coax her. A girl at this age is very easy to trick. At the very least, you can't let her say bad things about you. Otherwise, you can imagine the consequences." After Big Brother said this, he didn't say anything else. Only fourth brother sighed in annoyance. "I understand, boss." Fourth brother seemed to understand the key point. He nodded and walked out of the secret room accompanied by the sound of the door opening and closing. After fourth brother walked out of the secret room for a long time, the boss threw the crutch in his hand to the ground. "You can't do anything right. If it weren't for your wide network in Kikyo City, I wouldn't have let you go. How can I let you go? The boss roared, his voice echoing in the secret room. Black hair, black clothes, black sword. Would leaf Yama Nangongja. As for Nangongja, when fourth brother walked out of the door, he had already left the secret passage and followed him. To be honest, for this gang, Nangongja wasn't interested in it. Even if Nangongja was ruthless enough to destroy this gang and destroy their foundation, Kikyo City might be peaceful for a while, but it would be crushed by more gangs. In this era, if a city didn't have any underground forces, it could only mean that the city wasn't developed and prosperous enough. Underground forces were an inevitable outcome. Sometimes, if a city's underground forces were strong enough and had a certain scale, it would make the city more orderly. Because blindly abusing others, smashing and looting would only lead to digging one's own grave. Nangongja followed fourth brother and walked into a small independent building. The small building looked very ordinary, even a little shabby. It was a good place to hide someone. Fourth brother looked around, trying to see if anyone was following him. After looking around for a while, he took out a key and opened the door. Nangongja naturally couldn't swagger in from the front door like fourth brother. With a burst of strength, he ran up to the roof. His nimble body moved along the wall and entered the small building through a half-opened window. Nangongja slowly began to invade the small building. Based on the conversation between fourth brother and the boss, Nangongja was at least certain that Mishiro wouldn't be in danger. Therefore, Nangongja didn't need to use too much violence to forcibly remove him. Kikyo City was the face of the Fire Country and the Wind Country, and there were rules that forbade ninjas from using ninjutsu in the city. Although Nangongja didn't care if he went on a killing spree, it was still a slap in the face of the two countries. If he could avoid it, it was better not to do it. Soon, Nangongja found the place where Mishiro was being held. Because after fourth brother came in, he went straight to Mishiro. Their conversation was the best beacon. Not to mention fourth brother's soft words and persuasion. Mishiro's sobbing was like a clap of thunder that reached Nangongja's ears. Nangongja didn't intend to punish this group of hoodlums. But when he heard Mishiro's sobbing, Nangongja's chest was filled with anger. That naive and a little willful little girl. She's crying inside right now. This was the only thought in Nangongja's mind. Without thinking too much, Nangongja pulled out the black sword on his back. His internal energy surged and covered the black sword. With a light wave, a huge wave of energy rushed out. The wall in front of him was smashed to pieces. Seeing this, fourth brother was so scared that he knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. His head was bleeding on the ground. All kinds of begging words came out of his mouth. But Nangongja didn't listen to a single word. He just looked at Mishiro. Mishiro, I'm here to pick you up. Nangongja walked in front of Mishiro and gently hugged Mishiro's head. The black sword also cut the rope that bound Mishiro. Gong gong. Mishiro cried in Nangongja's arms. Let's go back. Nangongja looked at Mishiro and felt a throbbing pain in his heart. He hugged Mishiro in his arms. Okay, let's go home. Mishiro agreed and fell asleep. Today's experience really made the little girl extremely tired. She's asleep? Just nice. Nangongja looked at Mishiro and then at fourth brother who was kneeling at his feet. How can I let you off so easily? He stabbed with his sword and blood splattered everywhere. Chapter 41. Nangongja rescued Mishiro a few days ago, although Mishiro didn't say anything. However, Nangongja could still sense that there was still some fear lingering in her heart. It's time to leave Kikyo town. Where can the rest of the 5 countries go? The land of water is more dangerous than Kikyo town. After all, the name of the blood mist is not for nothing. Although the land of earth is okay, the Tsuchikige's attitude towards woodleaf ninjas is known to be bad. This old man has a lot of hatred towards woodleaf. The land of lightning? That's a big plateau. Many ninjas have vomiting and diarrhea, not to mention Mishiro's weak body. Nangongja didn't dare to take this risk. Thinking about it like this, Nangongja and Zhenbai practically couldn't go to the 5 great nations. In the end, Nangongja thought about it. Finally, he thought of a good place. The land of hot water. It's a famous hot spring holy land in the shinobi world. It's just a small country, but there are thousands of hot springs. Countless people go to the land of hot water because of its fame. The price of a house in the land of hot water is comparable to the price of a famous city in the land of fire. This shows how fascinating the land of hot water is. What's more, although Nangongja and Mishiro are now in Kikyo town on the border of the land of wind, the difference in temperature is not too obvious. But it's already autumn. Isn't it a pleasure to go to a hot spring with the cool autumn weather? Knock knock. Nangongja knocked on the wall. Since the last incident, Nangongja changed his living place to the one next to Mishiro's. As long as there's any movement, Nangongja will immediately go there. As for knocking on the wall, it's Mishiro's request. After all, with Nangongja's impatient temper, he often doesn't wait for Mishiro to respond and kick the door open. Under the resentful gaze of the owner, Mishiro's face was lost. She asked Nangongja to knock on the wall whenever he had something to do. Whenever Mishiro had time, she would knock on the wall a few more times, and Nangongja could go over to find Mishiro. After waiting for about 3 to 5 minutes, 2 knocks came from Mishiro's room. Nangongja went to Mishiro's door and waited for Mishiro to open it. What's wrong? Mishiro opened the door and saw Nangongja standing at the door. Half of his face peeked out of the door. Oh, you don't want me to go in? Nangongja looked at it helplessly. It's not. Mishiro turned his head and pouted. I'm here to discuss our itinerary with you. Let's get down to business. Nangongja saw Mishiro's attitude and quickly corrected his attitude. He said in a businesslike manner. You decide. Before Nangongja could reply, Mishiro closed the door. Nangongja was helpless. He didn't understand what was going on. When did I offend Mishiro? No. I didn't do anything these few days. Nangongja thought about how he offended Mishiro and walked back to his room gloomily. When Mishiro heard the sound of the door next door opening and closing, she sat down on the ground. He leaned against the door. This idiot. Mishiro grabbed a pillow beside him and threw it out. Idiot. Idiot. Deadwood. Fine. Mishiro was about to go crazy. Obviously. I've already decided to live on by myself. But why did you appear? How can I face you when you're so good to me? Mishiro looked at the starry sky outside the window and seemed to remember the brilliant stars and the bright moonlight that night. Of course, there was also the boy who fell on the eaves with a slight smile on his face. The two of them finally left Kikyo City. The distance between the land of wind and the land of hot water wasn't very close. The general distribution of countries in the ninja world was actually very simple. The 5 major countries occupied the largest area, and many small countries were sandwiched between their respective borders. The land of hot water was located at the border of the land of fire and the land of lightning. In order to get there, Nangongja had to pass through the land of river and part of the land of fire. The road will be very long. With Mishiro around, it was only natural that Seiji's speed would be even slower. Nangongja estimated that it would take at least 3 months to reach the land of hot water. So Nangongja specially found a carriage so that Mishiro could sit inside and walk less. After leaving Kikyo City for 2 days, Nangongja arrived at the border of the land of wind and the land of river. In the land of river there were a lot of forests. The tall trees made Nangongja feel like he was back in the wood leaf. Meet. Nangongja drove the carriage, but his eyes were a little confused. Although he was mentally prepared to face the truth, but when he really had to face it, he still felt a little nervous. After all, the person he suspected now is the most precious person to him. Just as Nangongja was thinking about how to face his sister while driving, Nangongja sat in the car. Nangongja suddenly took out a kunai from the ninja bag behind him and threw it at a tree behind him. Come out, don't hide. Nangongja got out of the carriage and looked at the direction of the tree coldly. Several ninjas also came out of the shadows. It seems that you are not honest. Nangongja pulled out his black sword and spread his internal force on it. Suddenly he turned around and cut the tree behind him. A huge blade of internal force gushed out and the tree fell down instantly. A figure also jumped out of the tree. Sand ninjas are still the same. Nangongja looked at his carriage, opened the curtain and said to Mishiro, who was sitting inside, "Wait a moment, there are a few rats following us. Although they are not very troublesome, they are a little difficult to deal with. I will deal with them as soon as possible." Mishiro nodded and looked at Nangongja, who was about to turn around and leave. She grabbed Nangongja's hand and said seriously, "Don't die. You promised to protect me?" Nangongja looked at Mishiro, who was holding his hand, and nodded. "Don't worry, it's just these losers. I don't care about them." After saying that, he got out of the carriage. Looking at the 6 ninjas who surrounded him in an instant, Nangongja began to observe. Among them, 4 of them were holding melee ninja weapons such as long swords, halberds, and the like. The other 2 didn't have anything, but the vigorous chakra aura from their bodies was enough to prove that they were at least Jonin-level ninjutsu ninjas. Sand ninjas really think highly of me. A total of 6 Jonins were sent to encircle me? Nangongja looked at them and couldn't help but smile, but the smile was particularly creepy. I'm very curious who leaked my whereabouts to sand ninjas. Hotel owner, Yakuza boss? It's just these two people. It must be very difficult to bury a nail in Kikyo Castle. Don't worry, when I have time, I will help you pry out the nail. Chapter 42. The 6 sand ninjas didn't say anything, just an endless silence. Several of them looked at each other, and the 2 ninjutsu ninjas with strong chakra fluctuations instantly converged their aura and chakra fluctuations. Of course, this was only temporary because as long as they use ninjutsu, it's impossible not to produce chakra fluctuations. Just like just now, Nangongja was able to find the people behind him because he used invisibility jutsu to hide in the canopy of a big tree. The 4 taijutsu ninjas in front of Nangongja made a rhombus formation and rushed towards him. During this time, many shurikens were shot from all directions to interfere with Nangongja. Did you set up a trap when you were hiding? Nangongja looked at the shurikens flying towards him, but it's useless. Nangongja quickly danced with the black sword in his hand, and internal force gathered in all directions and turned into a large net around Nangongja's body. All the shurikens rushing towards him were blocked. Ha! Nangongja roared, and the input of internal force increased, and the net around him seemed to have turned from an illusion to a substance in an instant. Sword rush. The big net was instantly fragmented, and the internal force sword marks that originally formed the big net turned into internal force blades flying around. He rushed towards the sand ninja who was charging towards him with his shurikens blocked by the shurikens. The dense internal force sword marks directly made the 4 sand ninjas unable to resist. However, the sand ninjas didn't only know taijutsu. So far, Nangongja has only seen Wood Leaf Mike Dai and his son Mike Kai who only used taijutsu. Most of the other taijutsu ninjas mainly used taijutsu, but they also used ninjutsu to enhance themselves. Wind release, wind wall. A ninja who fell behind the other 3 taijutsu ninjas used wind wall to block in front of his group. It was used to stop the attack of the sword marks. However, it was difficult for them to avoid being blocked for a while. Black Lion Li Yang. Protect me. Nangongja took advantage of this time to mobilize Li Yang's power. Ah, I knew that following you would never be idle. How long after the battle ended? There is another battle. Very good, let's go all out. Li Yang was also very excited. Isn't a lion a warlike animal? Thunder from the sky, black armor covered his body. Nangongja was clad in black armor with lightning surrounding his body. His speed and strength had greatly increased speed. In the blink of an eye, Nangongja appeared behind the ninjas. Just as he was about to kill a person, he heard a sound behind him. Earth release earth. The ground under his feet instantly break. Nangongja also seemed to have lost his balance and his entire body staggered. Nai. He was about to stab. Wait. The leader of the ninjas seemed to find something wrong and opened his mouth to warn him. But before his voice fell, the kunai had already pierced Nangongja's black armor. But the ninja didn't feel anything because the black armor was like jelly. Without using any strength, half of the kunai had already gone in. Haha. Nangongja suddenly laughed. Sand ninja, you're so naive. How did you become a jonin? Nangongja wasn't wrong. After the Shinobi World War, the sand ninja suffered heavy losses. After all, the combination of White Fang and Tsunade was very violent. This ninja was a new jonin after the Shinobi World War. Obviously he was not strong enough to fight against a jonin. Just as the ninja was stunned, Nangongja's body flashed with more powerful lightning. He wanted to pull out his kunai, but it was tightly clamped by Nangongja's black armor and he couldn't move. He wanted to let go, but the lightning paralyzed his arm and he couldn't let go. The ninja was electrocuted and fainted. Against a taijutsu ninja, not to mention 4. Even if there were 2 more Nangongja, Nangongja wouldn't be afraid. But a ninjutsu ninja was really troublesome. Just like before, if it wasn't for Nangongja's preparation. At this time he would have fallen into a difficult battle. So this is the key to why Nangongja took the risk to kill a ninjutsu ninja. Damn it. The leader of the taijutsu ninja saw this scene, and his nose was crooked. Everyone including the leader. According to the records of the past, they all thought that Nangongja's armor was extremely hard. Who would have thought that this armor could be soft and hard? This made many of the plans they made before the battle useless. Even a rare ninjutsu ninja was involved in this. It was a big loss. Earth release, rock puppet. Wind release, dark wind sword. Combination ninjutsu, rock swordsman. The leader of the ninja was indeed an experienced ninja. He knew that there was no point in playing tricks behind his back. He couldn't let the remaining ninjutsu ninja on his side be exposed too early. So, he used ninjutsu to forcefully hold Nangongja and provide an opportunity for his remaining teammates. The soil under his feet kept loosening and attached to the leader's body little by little. Slowly, it turned into a huge puppet that was 3 to 4 meters tall. The puppet opened its big hand and a huge green and white sword appeared in its hand. Nangongja looked at the leader's performance. Although they were enemies, he still praised the leader. The compatibility between wind release and earth release is not good, but you can maintain 2 ninjutsu without affecting each other. That's really rare. That's not all. Faced with Nangongja's praise, the leader instantly rushed out and said, "Attaching wind release to the puppet's feet to increase its speed?" Nangongja muttered, and his body quickly began to dodge. This kind of control is simply unimaginable. However, Nangongja did not retreat. The long sword in his hand instantly dispersed the internal energy. The black armor on his body instantly increased in thunder and spread to the blade of the black sword. "But you shouldn't have used earth release," Nangongja said. "All ninjutsu are mutually reinforcing and restraining. The restraining relationship between thunder release and earth release is second only to water release and fire release." Nangongja used his speed to instantly stand behind the puppet's blind spot. The puppet waved its arms trying to hit Nangongja, but Nangongja dodged all of its attacks. Nangongja stabbed the black sword deep into the puppet's body. "Riang, let this guy see the power of the black lion." Of course. Roar. 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 The thunder on Nangongja's body roared like a lion as it continuously poured into the puppet's body. Chapter 43. The puppet's body was like a tree's bark, peeling off piece by piece under the effect of the strong electric current. It fell to the ground and made a piu-piu sound. Just when Nangongja thought that the situation was settled, something unexpected happened. The rock puppet was about to fall apart, leaving only a small part behind. The leader of the rock puppet was almost exposed. However, the almost spherical puppet suddenly exploded. It wasn't just one ninja that jumped out. There was also the ninjutsu ninja that disappeared. No wonder the puppet could use both wind release and earth release at the same time without affecting each other. At the same time, it could use wind release to increase its speed. Nangongja immediately understood what was going on. Although a ninjutsu ninja alone can cause me some trouble as long as I'm careful enough, it shouldn't be a big problem. Since that's the case, why don't I let this ninjutsu ninja play its biggest role and turn it into a real fighting force? What a good plan. Since the ninjutsu ninja had appeared, he naturally wouldn't expose himself for nothing. Wind release, hurricane destruction. The ninjutsu ninja's hand seals were flying, and he quickly cast ninjutsu in Nangongja's direction. There were at least 20 to 30 huge wind blades, and they were chaotically flying towards Nangongja's direction. The other 3 taijutsu ninjas quickly stood in a suitable position to prevent Nangongja from escaping. They were trying to maximize the power of the wind blades. As for the leader of the taijutsu ninja, the huge consumption of chakra and the invasion of lightning had consumed a lot of his stamina. At this time he was watching from the periphery and he was taking some pills to recover his chakra and stamina. Seeing that his escape route was almost completely sealed, Nangongja could only try his best to swing his black sword, and use his internal force to cut off chakra's characteristics to face the wind blades head-on. Every time Nangongja received a blow from the wind blades, he would be forced back 3 to 5 steps. When the ninjutsu ninja saw that Nangongja was actually able to withstand the power of the wind blade head-on, he was very surprised. He knew the power of these wind blades the best. Back then, when he wasn't proficient with it, he had shaved off the top of a small mountain with his half-finished chaotic hurricane break. Therefore, the ninjutsu ninja adjusted their strategy. Whenever the wind blades were close to Nangongja, they would activate their chakra to detonate the wind blades. One after another, the huge wind blades instantly transformed into even smaller, yet even more subtle and sharp knives. Nangongja could block the huge wind blades, but these small wind blades were hard to block. He could only rely on his black armor to defend himself. Creaking sounds accompanied by sparks flew in all directions, proving the difficult situation Nangongja was in at the moment. At this time, the ninja leader who had rested for a long time finally joined the battle. Once again he used Earth Meld to give himself the appearance of a puppet. The huge puppet punched again and again, forcing Nangongja to face the sharpest part of the wind blades. The taijutsu ninja who was replaced didn't stay idle either. He actually approached the carriage where Mishiro was. When Nangongja saw this scene, it was as if his heart was on fire. These sand ninjas were obviously targeting him. All of this had nothing to do with Mashiro. But Mashiro was involved in this? These days of getting along, Nangongja had a deeper understanding of this sometimes confused and capricious girl. How could such a girl lose her life like this? Nangongja was very clear in his heart. As long as he was killed here, all the witnesses would be silenced except for the sand ninjas. Because Wood Leaf and the sand ninjas were in the honeymoon period after the peace negotiations. Anything that could affect the peace couldn't be made public. If he died, Wood Leaf wouldn't do anything. Because a dead person, no matter how famous he was when he was alive, no one would try so hard to get justice for him. The matter of the White Fang is not far away. How trustworthy can the integrity of the people of Konoha be? So at this moment, Nangongja could only protect himself and Mashiro. There were no reinforcements. As long as he was defeated, he would die, or even become a research material for various experiments. After all, a Jonin's body could be studied a lot. No one touch her. Nangongja said word by word. His tone was filled with an indescribable feeling. It was as if he was trying to endure an indescribable pain. Kid, are you crazy? Riang shouted in Nangongja's mind. That girl is dead. Without her, you would have been able to break out of the encirclement and wouldn't be in this predicament. Now you're using this kind of self-harming method to gain strength. After the strength dissipates, the long period of weakness and eternal pain is not worth it. That's right, Nangongja was currently overdrawing his strength. When Kai was receiving Nangongja's training, he didn't tell Nangongja all the contents of the Hashiman Tanku. But in order to make it easier for Nangongja to teach him, he still revealed some of the key concepts to Nangongja. With Riang's persuasion and help, Nangongja developed a set of secret techniques that could transform the gentle internal energy into sharp sword energy to attack the acupuncture points and stimulate the potential of life. Nangongja called it, Sword Chi Breaking Acupoint. After perfecting this secret technique, Nangongja would normally use extremely weak sword energy to attack the acupuncture points to expand his meridians and acupuncture points and increase his internal energy cultivation. This method also allowed Nangongja's strength to improve by leaps and bounds. But this also proved the danger of using sword energy to attack the acupuncture points. Ever since Nangongja's physical cultivation increased greatly and was close to the body of a half-step immortal, his body's toughness and recovery ability had greatly increased. But even so, he could only use a very small amount of internal energy to attack the acupuncture points. At this moment, in order to protect Mashiro, Nangongja had used almost all of his remaining internal energy to transform into sword energy. Nangongja and Riang couldn't estimate what kind of damage this would cause to him. If he were to remove the black armor now, Nangongja's restless blood would probably burst out of his body. Fresh blood would also flow out of Nangongja's 7 orifices, looking extremely frightening. Nangongja finally couldn't suppress the pain and could only roar out loud to vent it. At the same time, Nangongja charged towards Mashiro while enduring the heavy punches and wind blades. Under the control of Nangongja's increased strength, the black sword produced streaks of sharp sword energy. Everywhere Nangongja passed, it was a mess. The ninja who was walking towards Mashiro also turned into a bloody mist under the pressure of the sword energy. Chapter 44. Nangongja finally understood. As long as he still wanted to protect Mashiro, then he was destined to be at a disadvantage in this battle. Time continued to pass as both sides battled. The sky was gradually turning dark. However, there were things that a gentleman should do and there were things that he should not do. Nangongja would definitely not give up on Mashiro. Thus, Nangongja could only take advantage of the fact that he was breaking through his limits to break through the encirclement. There was only one path for him to choose. Nangongja opened the wooden door of the carriage and saw Mashiro shivering in the corner of the carriage. Mashiro, let's go. Nangongja tried his best to use a gentle tone to talk to Mashiro, but the pain all over his body made Nangongja's every word tremble. Miyagi-you. Although Mashiro was usually a little naive, it did not mean that Mashiro was not smart. At this moment, the black armor on Nangongja's body had many cracks, and many scratches were distributed on the armor. Furthermore, Nangongja's 7 orifices were still bleeding. However, before Mashiro could finish his sentence, Nangongja reached out his right hand and looked at Mashiro silently. Even in such a predicament, his eyes did not lose their usual brilliance. Instead, they shone even more brightly. Mashiro could not help but stop talking. An indescribable sense of security surged in his heart. It was this person in front of him who had protected him time and time again. Even in such a predicament, he did not abandon him. Mishiro nodded. The tears in his eyes miraculously disappeared. He reached out his hand and grabbed Nangongji's hand tightly. Nangongji used his strength and pulled Mishiro into his embrace. His feet exerted force and his whole body moved like an arrow. At this moment, among the 6 sand ninjas, one had fainted, one chakra was exhausted, and the remaining 4 taijutsu ninjas, although they still had some fighting power, they did not have the strength to chase after Nangongji. The leader only relied on drugs to suppress his bad condition. If there was a fierce battle, he would definitely not be able to endure it. As for the remaining 3 taijutsu ninjas, whoever chased after him would die. Although the ninjas were obsessed with completing the mission, they were also very rational. They knew how to gain the most benefits. This was the bottom line of the Sands plan. They could have no results, but they could not have a large number of casualties. Because at this moment, the Sand ninjas no longer have the ability to bear. This operation was an opportunistic move on the part of the Sand. Nangongji was to stay, was to stay, was to kill to stay. At least they could give Wood Leaf's group some trouble, wasn't that good? Nangongji continued to move forward. Slowly, his consciousness began to blur. However, his legs continued to move forward under the urging of his subconscious. Until he was exhausted, Nangongji and Mishiro in his arms fell to the ground together. Gong gong. Gong gong. Mishiro saw Nangongji fall to the ground and struggled to get out of Nangongji's arms. He put Nangongji's body on the ground. Nangongji's black armor also disappeared shortly after Nangongji lost consciousness. Nangongji's body did not have the protection of the black armor. In an instant, the blood that was surging due to the sword chi flowed out of the pores of his body. His whole body instantly turned into a blood man. Nangongji was lying on the ground at this moment, was soaked with Nangongji's blood. Mishiro looked around and saw some tall trees. He was a little flustered. When did Mishiro experience such things? Coupled with the fact that Nangongji was covered in blood, Mishiro was even more scared. There was no way. Mishiro could only use all his strength to carry Nangongji on his back and move forward bit by bit with difficulty. Go east. A voice suddenly sounded in Mishiro's mind. Who is it? Mishiro was startled and sat on the ground. I am Li Yang, an existence similar to Nangongji's spiritual beast. Now that Nangongji has fainted, I am about to use up all my strength and fall into a deep slumber. In the east there is a village that I have just detected. If we go there, Nangongji can still be saved. Li Yang sped up his speech and quickly said the information he wanted to say. After that he fell into silence. No matter how Mishiro shouted, there was no response. Mishiro was like a headless fly flying everywhere. At this moment, Li Yang could point out a direction for him. It was a very good target. However, Li Yang did not say how far east it was. Originally, Mishiro's physical strength was only slightly better than an average girl's. In addition, he had to carry Nangongji on his back. His physical strength was already lacking. In addition, the scene of a group of ninjas fighting created a huge psychological pressure on Mishiro. Therefore, Mishiro quickly ran out of energy. But at this moment, Mishiro could not stop. If he stopped, would the Sand ninjas catch up with him? Also, Nangongji's injury was so serious at this moment. If he stopped, it would definitely not be beneficial to save Nangongji's life. Therefore, Mishiro could only clench his teeth. Slowly, a pair of shoes were worn out in many places on the uneven ground. Mishiro's soft arms and white cheeks also showed traces of blood under the various thorny plants in the forest. His clothes also became ragged. Mishiro walked in this deep forest for nearly the whole night. When the sky was about to turn white, Mishiro almost used his hands and feet to move forward. When he saw the outline of a village in front of him, his whole spirit relaxed. Mishiro fainted. Nangongji and Mishiro fainted under a big tree near the village. When Mishiro woke up again, he was lying on a wooden bed. The thick smell of decocting medicine lingered in the air. Turning his head hard, he saw Nangongji was wrapped like a dumpling on the bed on his right. "Sister, you're awake?" A voice sounded. Mishiro looked over. It was a little girl about 5 or 6 years old. At this moment, she was holding a bowl of decoction in her hand in front of Mishiro. As if feeling Mishiro's gaze, the little girl quickly said, "Sister, don't worry, you're too exhausted to speak. You'll be fine after some rest. Drink this bowl of decoction first, you'll feel much better." The little girl helped Mishiro up and helped Mishiro drink the decoction. "The condition of the brother with you is not so good. The injuries on his body are extremely serious. Although it's strange, there's a magical force that's promoting his recovery very quickly. But it still takes some time to recover." Chapter 45. Hot. Nangongja only had this feeling at the moment. It was as if he was in a fire. When Nangongja struggled to open his eyes, he found that he was surrounded by raging flames, and he was being dragged into a cellar by a pair of hands. Mom? Nangongja didn't know why he blurted out the name of the person in front of him. But the face of the person in front of him was particularly confused. Nangongja could only faintly hear the words, live. The rest of the words were silent, but Nangongja could feel that the woman in front of him was very panicked at that time, but she still forced herself to calm down in front of Nangongja and hid Nangongja. After Nangongja was put into the cellar, the exit of the cellar was closed. The surrounding air was getting hotter and hotter, and Nangongja fainted under the effect of the hot air. Nangongro took the copper basin and walked to the room where her brother was. This was the 15th day after Mashiro woke up. Sister, this is what brother wanted to exchange. Grandpa asked me to bring it to you. The little girl who woke up after Nangongro walked behind Nangongro and stretched out her small hand to pull Mashiro's clothes. She handed over a bowl of black ointment. This little girl was called Ling Er. As for the grandpa that the girl mentioned, he was the only doctor in the village and everyone called him Ah Wang. Okay, I know. Thank Ah Wang for me. Mashiro took the ointment and smiled at Ling Er. But the reluctance in his smile couldn't be concealed. Ling Er and Ah Wang had been practicing medicine in this village for many years, so how could they not see such an expression? Nangongja's condition was not good at the moment. After Ah Wang's diagnosis, he found that Nangongja's body had a magical power that was constantly repairing Nangongja's body. But when the power was exhausted, this power disappeared a few days ago for unknown reasons. And Nangongja's injury was barely half healed. Until now, many of his veins, muscles and other internal structures had not recovered. He could only rely on the ointment that Ah Wang gave him to slowly heal. And until now, Nangongja hadn't regained consciousness. According to Ah Wang's explanation, Nangongja had used too much strength, and the surging blood brought a lot of pressure to his brain, which caused his whole body to fall into a coma. Mashiro watched as Linger walked out, then left the door ajar. Then he picked up a towel's bodies and a towel hand. His bodies picks as layers of black medicinal stains were wiped off, revealing Nangongja's bloodless skin. As Mashiro wiped away her tears, a layer of mist began to form in her eyes. Gonggong, it's all my fault. If it weren't for the fact that you had to take care of me, you wouldn't have suffered such a serious injury. Mashiro's eyes were hazy with tears and he stuttered as he spoke. His entire being exuded a sense of self-blame. However, Mashiro's hands didn't stop moving. After he was done, he applied the black ointment on Nangongja's wounds. Just as Mashiro turned around and was about to apply some ointment on his wound, Lin Sanji stopped him. A large hand pressed down on Mashiro's head. His trembling hand slowly stroked Mashiro's hair. A weak voice rang out. Mashiro has never been a burden to me. Mashiro is someone I want to protect. Mashiro's entire body began to tremble. He couldn't hold back the tears in his eyes and they gushed out. Gonggong. He turned around and saw the person who was protecting him. Mashiro's heart was filled with complex emotions. He couldn't speak. He only reached out and grabbed Nangongja's hand. Let me apply the ointment for you first. Applying the ointment is the most important thing. Since you're conscious now, Gonggong, your body must have recovered to a certain extent. Mashiro really couldn't express his feelings at this moment. He could only change the topic. He talked about Nangongja's injuries. Thank you for taking care of me all this time. Nangongja said to Mashiro. It's nothing. You were injured because you protected me. Then I should take responsibility for you, shouldn't I? Mashiro said as he applied the ointment. The two of them didn't say anything else. They just enjoyed the atmosphere at this moment. It didn't take long for Mashiro to finish applying the ointment to the wounds. Looking at Nangongja's smile, Mashiro suddenly lay down in front of Nangongja. He gently kissed Nangongja's cheek. This is your reward. Don't think too much. Masahiro's cheeks were red as she quickly walked out. Looking at Mashiro's back, Nangongja was stunned. Kid, you're quite lucky. Liang suddenly said in Nangongja's mind. Alright, Liang. That's not the important thing now. Nangongja tried his best to calm his emotions. He calmly began to check his body's condition. Really? But that little girl just now walked through the forest for an entire night to save you. Even though she fainted from exhaustion, she still held onto your hand tightly. After losing Nangongja's internal energy, Liang could only rely on her own internal energy to recover her consciousness and ensure Nangongja's safety. Liang didn't see everything Mashiro did in the past half a month, but she knew most of it. Li Yang felt that these words should be said to Nangongzhi. Li Yang. Nangongzhi roared, scaring himself and Li Yang. It's not the time to think about Mishiro and me. I had a dream when I was unconscious. Thinking about his dream, Nangongzhi's heart was filled with indescribable anxiety and sorrow. A dream? Li Yang naturally knew that Nangongzhi left Woodleaf Village because of his dream. Listen to me, kid. It doesn't matter what kind of memories you have sealed. What you're doing now is the worst thing you can do. It doesn't matter if it's Mishiro or your sister. There are more people who care about you and love you. They're all by your side now. These feelings and the care you have for each other are definitely not fake. You alienated your sister because of your memories. You lost your cool because of your memories and gave vent to your emotions, putting yourself in danger. You rejected Mishiro because of your memories and responded to your feelings. I know that you care a lot about your sealed memories. But those memories aren't everything to you. You still have the present. The dead are gone. Memories are just memories. Some things can't be clung to. Clinging to them is like being possessed by a demon. Don't wait until you lose it, then start to indulge in it again. Chapter 46. Nangongzhi quietly listened to Li Yang's words, stretched out his trembling hands and took the black sword beside his bed. He held the black sword tightly in his arms. The coldness of the black sword was transmitted to Nangongzhi's body through the bandages. It was only a weak coldness, but it made Nangongzhi's whole body tremble. Li Yang, I understand what you said. I also understand what you want to say. But understanding doesn't mean I can do it. I'm different from you. I've only lived for a little over 10 years, and more than half of my memories have been sealed by someone. I killed a lot of people in the past few years. At the beginning I was scared. Every night when I closed my eyes, I could see the people I killed looking at me with bloodstains on their faces. Although they didn't say any words of hatred, my heart was scared to death. But I endured it. No matter how uncomfortable I felt, no matter how guilty I felt, I had to endure it. Because my sister, my only family in the world, is waiting for me to come home. My sister's stable life in Woodleaf needs my protection. So I can only keep killing. Whether it's the sand, the rock, or the mist. Whether it's civilians or ninjas. I can only kill them one by one. I know very well what will happen if I keep going on this road. Sooner or later I will end up like White Fang. That's it, I won't have a good death. Used by others, betrayed by others. Become a bargaining chip for others. But I still resolutely do it. There's no high goal. Peace in the ninja world, the will of fire. What does it have to do with me? I'm not such a great person. The whole education system in Woodleaf is to brainwash the villagers. Let them be instilled with the consciousness of sacrificing for the village. But I'm not a person who was raised in the village. When I was struggling to survive in Konoha's subordinate towns, when I saw Konoha's ninjas who looked kind on the surface, but were actually arrogant, I already understood. There's no one in this world who fights for justice. They're just wearing the tiger's skin of justice and pursuing their own interests. If a person really only pursues peace, then he will become a weapon for others. If a person keeps kindness in his heart, then his life will be taken by others. The sand ninjas call me Yama. What is Yama? To say it nicely, it's a person who harvests lives. To say it bluntly, an ugly demon. I decided to become an evil demon for Ruro's sake. But if such a person deceives me, what should I do? Yang. The reason why I escaped from Konoha was because of you. Not only because I wanted to escape, but because I wanted to escape. More importantly, I don't want my most important spiritual pillar to be destroyed by my own hands. Nangongzhi didn't cry. His voice didn't even contain the slightest trace of sadness. Every word he said was calm and steady. It could be said that he didn't have any emotional fluctuations. These heart-wrenching words made it seem like he was narrating someone else's story. However, the black sword in Nangongzhi's arms trembled slightly. His knuckles turned white as he gripped the black sword too tightly. Nangongzhi's internal energy, which had been exhausted from healing his injuries, was now flowing rapidly. It was clearly a small stream, but it flowed like a river. Li Yang could feel all of this. Her heart and body were one, so Li Yang could feel Nangongzhi's anxiety and grief. Nangongzhi said a lot, including many important things. Nangongro was Nangongzhi's life support. This world was destined to be filled with sorrow. People wanted to protect themselves and the things they cherished. It was inevitable that they would hurt others. Businessmen exploited the commoners so that their families could live a better life. Commoners smashed, looted, and became bandits in order to survive. Ninjas controlled their martial arts and collected huge amounts of money in order to have enough income. Aristocrats, in order to maintain their ruling status, kneeled down and licked ninjas' boots and continued to exploit the commoners. Which of these simple words didn't represent rolling tears of blood? In this world, who wasn't a sinner? Therefore, a person had to have something to rely on in order to maintain their true self. What would happen if the sustenance collapsed? No one knew. Kid, you won't destroy your thing with your own hands. Li Yang said with determination. What? I can't find any reason to forgive Ro Ro. Nangongja curled his body and hugged the black sword even tighter as he muttered. I've lived for so long. How could I not know about the filth between people? But sometimes the path that people face is wrong. Now to you, a crack has been pried open in your relationship with your sister. It's meaningless to try to mend it. But what if this crack is only on the surface? Li Yang's words had a hidden meaning, and he was secretly giving Nangongja pointers. You mean I don't hate Ro Ro? Nangongja was very smart. When he heard Li Yang's words, he instantly understood Li Yang's meaning. If you really can't resist your sister, you won't leave with Leaf at all. If you really can't forgive your sister's deceit, you won't still call her by her nickname. Memories were only a part of one's life, but they were not everything. Your sister's care and affection for you has never been hypocritical. Li Yang said with a trembling voice. Every word was like a sledgehammer hammering Nangongja's heart. Suddenly, Nangongja seemed to hear a voice whispering in his ear. It was constantly persuading him to return to Woodleaf. Ask for the truth and let him truly let go of his worries. The voice kept getting louder and louder and it kept echoing. Ah! Nangongja cried out softly. He endured the pain in his body and stood up. He used his hands to remove the bandages on his body. He walked to the clothes rack, took off his clothes and put them on. Holding the black sword and his gauntlet, Nangongja opened the door and walked out. Gong Gong. What are you doing? Seeing Nangongja like this, Mishiro immediately rushed over. Your injuries haven't healed yet, forcing yourself like this. What do you think? Mishiro stared into Nangongja's eyes, and the anger in his heart suddenly exploded. I want to go back. Nangongja looked at Mishiro and said emotionlessly. In Mishiro's eyes, he seemed to have become a stranger that Nangongja met by chance. A feeling of abandonment enveloped his heart. Nangongja looked at Mishiro. Mishiro's eyes were filled with tears. He raised his right hand and was about to slap Nangongja's face. However, he still stopped. She could only cover her mouth to make herself softer. He turned around and ran away. Chapter 47. Mishiro? Nangongja looked at Mishiro's back and whispered. Whether it's his feelings for Mishiro or Mishiro's attitude towards him, Nangongja is now very far away from him. That's why Nangongja pretended to be indifferent to Mishiro, hoping to end these feelings quickly. The combination of an ordinary person and a ninja is an extremely irrational behavior. Just like many soldiers returning home from the battlefield, they will have all kinds of psychological trauma. This is also an invisible burden for his family. In the shinobi world, ninjas and ordinary people live in two different worlds. Although there is contact, there is also an invisible wall separating the two. Nangongja still left, even though Mishiro has been staring at him with a pair of teary eyes from the side of the house. But when Nangongja walked less than a kilometer, an old man came to him. The old man was dressed in white, and there was a somewhat shabby bamboo basket on his back. A few herbs and a medicine hoe were placed in the basket. The old man looked at least 80 or 90 years old. His white hair was casually tied in a bun on the top of his head. His long beard hung down to his chest. One step, one step. He didn't seem to be in a hurry, but the old man's figure was constantly flashing, at least 2 or 3 meters forward with each step. Nangongja didn't have time to react. The old man had already arrived behind Nangongja. A dry and warm hand was placed on Nangongja's shoulder. Young man, although I know that you must have your own worries, but listen to the old man. If some things are really abandoned, it really can't be salvaged anymore. Nangongja didn't care about what the old man said, because the old man's footwork really scared Nangongja. Everything that is a threat must be held in one's hands as much as possible. This is Nangongja's biggest rule in the shinobi world. Pulling out the black sword, he attached his internal force to the sword, emitting a sparkling ice-blue halo. Nangongja's wrist shook, and a beautiful sword flower appeared, forcing the old man to retreat. When the old man retreated, his body was a little unbalanced and a small flaw appeared. Nangongja stabbed his sword, wanting to stab the old man's leg, to restrain the old man's footwork. Seeing that the sword was about to stab the old man didn't panic. Instead, he used the tendency of his body's imbalance to make himself fall even harder. Just when he was about to touch the ground, he turned around and appeared behind Nangongzhi. As for the black sword, it didn't even touch the old man's clothes. Young man, you are so young. Judging from his aura, he's not far from being possessed. The old man snorted softly, but it was like a clap of thunder in Nangongzhi's ears. To spit blood, spit. Spit. The blood fell to the ground. Seeing the color of the blood, Nangongzhi's eyes widened. Because the blood was very thick, it was obviously spat out, but it gathered into a pool. Not a single drop of blood spilled. The color was pitch black without a trace of blood. A strange stench was emitted from the black blood that he spat out. Seeing Nangongzhi's stunned expression, the old man walked to Nangongzhi's side. I have examined your injury. It was very serious at first. But there is a strange energy in your body that is promoting your development. But what shocked me even more is that there is another kind of energy that is destroying your body at the same time, preventing your recovery from speeding up. Nangongzhi heard the old man's words and roughly knew the old man's identity. This old man is the one called a Wang that Mishiro mentioned, the one who cured him. You are a Wang? Nangongzhi asked tentatively. It is indeed me. Your current condition is very bad, not just physical injuries. More importantly, there is a huge flaw in your heart. Wang stretched out his hand and placed it on Nangongzhi's wrist. I have been investigating the energy that is repairing your body. I found out that it is a lost secret technique called inner strength. At that time, this secret technique was even more powerful than chakras. But this secret technique has a huge flaw, causing its inheritance to almost be lost. Flaw. Nangongzhi heard a Wang say that there was a flaw in his cultivation method, and he was unwilling to believe it. But in his heart, he faintly felt that a Wang's words were reasonable. That's right, it is a flaw. Wang nodded and let go of Nangongzhi's wrist. He turned around and placed his hand on the back of his waist and continued, when inner strength is cultivated in the right direction, it will be neutral and peaceful, nourishing the body for a long time. But if inner strength is cultivated in the wrong direction, it will be strange and abnormal. It will be good at killing, but it will hurt others and oneself. There is another name for inner strength that is cultivated in the wrong direction. Sword energy. Before one could say the name of inner strength that was cultivated in the wrong direction, Nangongzhi said it first. That's right, the way to transform inner strength into sword energy was to cultivate in the wrong direction. Wang looked at Nangongzhi's reaction at the moment and didn't say anything more. He just continued his words. That's right, it is sword energy. Sword energy is just like its name. It is sharp and dangerous. There is no harm in cultivating inner strength normally, but if inner strength is cultivated in the wrong direction and transformed into sword energy, the inner strength will start to transform into sword energy uncontrollably. This process will not stop until all the inner strength in the body has turned into sword energy. If the whole body is filled with sword energy but you can't control it. People who cultivate inner strength will be possessed by the devil. When possessed by the devil to the extreme, they will. After that, Wang didn't say anything more. But Nangongzhi understood what Wang meant. Once possessed by the devil, the whole person would become murderous. It could be said that it was instinctive to destroy everything in front of him. It would not stop until his sword energy was exhausted and his life energy was exhausted. Then he would die. He would turn into flying ashes and his body and soul would be destroyed. Nangongzhi's inner strength was all automatically operated according to the inner strength stored in his body by his grandfather. So there were a lot of things that Nangongzhi should know, but he didn't know. Nangongro once told Nangongzhi some things, like sword energy and the concept of being possessed by the devil. But Nangongro didn't say clearly how to become possessed by the devil. And the danger of sword energy that Wang mentioned, it was also the first time that Nangongzhi knew about it. Do you really not know, or did you deliberately not tell me? Nangongzhi's heart was filled with doubts and uneasiness at the moment. Because if Nangongro did it deliberately, then what good would it do for him to become possessed by the devil and become a murderer? The figure of the sister who had always cared for him, although sometimes a little willful, but was very well behaved, gradually blurred in Nangongzhi's mind. Chapter 48. Young man. To tell you the truth, when I forced you to spit out that mouthful of turbid blood, I felt that you might be on the verge of becoming a demon. The old man did not care about Nangongzhi's mood. Instead, he said something even more shocking. This sentence also forcefully pulled Nangong's thoughts back to reality. On the verge of becoming a demon? But doesn't that only happen when all of the internal energy in your body is transformed into sword energy? When I checked my internal energy, I only found that a small part of it was sword energy. Nangongja checked his internal energy and found that it was not completely transformed into sword energy like Awang said, so he quickly raised his doubts. It's strange. Logically speaking, each person's inner force would have its own characteristics. Whether it's in the form of internal energy or sword energy, there's no essential difference. However, the essence of the sword chi and inner strength in your body are very different. Needless to say, your internal energy is moderate and has accumulated quite a lot. But your sword energy doesn't seem like it was just accumulated and transformed. Instead, it feels like you've been cultivating your sword energy for at least 20 to 30 years. The sword energy carries an austere aura that even makes my heart palpitate. After the old man expressed his doubts about Nangongja's internal energy and sword energy, he stroked his beard and waited for Nangongja to give him an answer. As for Nangongja, at this moment he had a terrifying guess in his heart. Sword energy and internal energy have different characteristics? Could it be possible to think that sword chi and inner chi were not cultivated by the same person? Nangongja was very clear that a part of his internal energy came from his grandfather. Of course, the loss of internal energy from person to person was extremely great. In addition, he had been diligently cultivating his internal energy all these years. It could be said that the amount of internal energy he cultivated had already surpassed the amount of internal energy his grandfather transmitted. As for the proportion, wasn't the amount of internal energy that grandfather transmitted to him almost the same as the proportion of sword energy now? Although Nangongja didn't quite understand some of the joints, there was an 80% chance that the inner strength that turned into sword chi was transmitted by his grandfather. Nangongja didn't want to tell Awang about this, so he kept silent for a long time. Awang gradually understood that Nangongja didn't want to talk about this, so he didn't force Nangongja to answer. Instead, he began to talk about something else. Since you're already on the verge of becoming a demon, if that's the case, you can't face the things that you're worried about. Awang looked seriously into Nangongja's eyes and said, anyone who is on the verge of becoming a devil will have a sensitive and fragile mind. Any slight change in the people or things they were worried about could make them even crazier. You need to recuperate in your current state. I'll check my medical books and then help you solve the problem of becoming a devil. What do you think? Awang's words were very clear. As long as he didn't want to become a devil and die, he had to stay with Awang for a long time and slowly recuperate. As for the chance of being cured, although Awang didn't say it, it could be imagined that the chance was very small. Otherwise, the inheritance of inner strength wouldn't have been passed down to such a small number of withered leaves. Okay, I'll go back with you. Nangongja thought for a moment and agreed. First, there was a problem with his current body. Nangongja was very clear in his heart. Since there was a possibility of being cured by Awang, he might as well give it a try. Second, although he didn't know why Awang was so familiar with the system of internal energy, he was sure that Awang didn't deceive him. Third, of course, was Mishiro. Nangongja remembered what he did on impulse and Mishiro's teary eyes. He felt a sharp pain in his heart. Nangongja didn't understand why he made such a decision on the spur of the moment. But he had a faint premonition that it might have a lot to do with the disorder of his heart caused by becoming a devil. In that case, let's go back. I think Mishiro is still sad. It's good for you to coax her. Awang had lived for so many years. How could he not see the feelings between a boy and a girl? Although Nangongja had been in a coma, Mishiro's meticulous care of Nangongja made Awang very clear that there was a deep friendship between the two. Being suddenly pointed out by Awang, even if Nangongja was usually thick-skinned, he still blushed. He didn't respond to Awang's words. He just walked in the direction of the village. Looking at Nangongja's current appearance, Awang couldn't help but smile. Thinking about his past, he was dazed for a moment. He muttered to himself, "What is love in the world? It makes people live and die together. Yunair, I finally found a person who cultivates internal strength. I couldn't save you back then, but now I want to save him. He still has a long life ahead of him. Not to mention there's a girl who likes him so much waiting for him." The two quickly arrived at Awang's straw hut. Nangongja had just walked in when he heard Mishiro and Ling Er's conversation. Ling Er, sister, is going to Woodleaf Village to find Gong Gong. He was too strange just now. I want to find him and ask him what's going on. Mishiro's tone was very angry, but it faintly revealed her worry for Nangongja. But sister, Woodleaf Village is very far away from here. And unless an ordinary person goes to issue a mission, There's no way they can stay in Woodleaf for long. Ling Er still knew a bit about Woodleaf's system. She knew that Mashiro would be in trouble if he went. Then I'll stay in Gong Gong's house until he tells me clearly what's going on. He's the ninja I hired to protect me. How can he just leave like that? At worst, I'll make a big deal out of it and make Woodleaf's Hokage have no choice but to intervene. Mashiro's words at this moment could be said to be very unorthodox, but hidden within them was Mashiro's deep feelings for Nangongja. Mashiro and Ling Er were still talking about these things, but Nangongja couldn't hear a single word. He just looked at Mashiro's back as he packed his luggage. Suddenly, he strode towards Mashiro and opened his arms to hug Mashiro in his arms. Mashiro. Mashiro? Nangongja's heart was filled with mixed feelings. For a moment he didn't know what to say. He just kept calling Mashiro's name, Gong Gong? A familiar feeling wrapped around Mashiro. Mashiro instantly realized that Nangongja was back. You idiot! What can't you tell me? Why do you have to use this method to push me away? Mashiro turned around and grabbed Nangongja's arm and fiercely bit it. Chapter 49. After a long while, Mashiro finally let out a sigh of relief. He carefully looked at the place where he had bitten, and then touched the mark he had left there with his hand. He muttered to himself, "Humph, you're lucky." When Nangongja heard this he could only smile. Yes, yes, yes. It's good enough that you only bit me. If I were you, I would probably strangle myself to death. Mashiro looked at Nangongja's shameless appearance and didn't know what to say. However, he still opened his mouth after thinking about it. What happened to you just now? Is too abnormal. Faced with Mashiro's question, Nangongja felt that he couldn't tell the truth about his situation. This was because it was too dangerous to be possessed by a demon. There's a slight problem that affected my mental state. In addition, I thought of some anxious situations, so I went a little overboard. I'm sorry for being so rude to you. When Mashiro saw that Nangongja didn't intend to explain clearly, he knew that there was no point in pressing him. Who knows, he might even throw a tantrum and act shamelessly, so he didn't ask any further. Awang will heal you. Nangongja knew that Mashiro wasn't just talking about the injuries on his body, he was also talking about the mental problem that he mentioned just now. I know. Don't worry, it's not a big problem. Nangongja patted Mashiro's head. Mashiro rubbed against Nangongja's embrace and broke free from Nangongja's embrace. He looked at the tattered bandages on Nangongja's body that he had torn, and there was still a little bit of ointment left inside. Mashiro was so angry that he raised his hand and gave Nangongja a chop. You're really too much. I already applied the ointment for you, but you still pulled it like this. Really? You go to the room and wait. I'll go and get some ointment with Ling. I'll put it on for you again. Nangongja seemed to be in pain after being slapped by Mashiro. She arched her body and acted as if she was in pain. Now that you mention it, I do feel a bit of pain. Shameless. Mashiro rolled his eyes, then pushed open the door and walked out. Just you wait. After Mashiro walked out of the door, Nangongja sighed. His entire body relaxed. His forehead was covered with a thin layer of cold sweat. His limbs went limp, and he could only hurriedly use the black sword to prop himself up. Nangongja's injuries were actually quite serious. When Nangongja woke up, at least half of the wounds on his body had not healed. In addition, he had impulsively put on his clothes and walked out. The ups and downs of his mood, coupled with the fact that he had walked a considerable distance by himself. Even the wounds that were originally healed had relapsed. Along the way, Nangongja was subconsciously on guard and nervous because of Ah Wang's strength. So the severity of his injuries was not obvious. It was not until this moment that Nangongja could truly relax. Then he couldn't hold it anymore. This is really a bit too much. Nangongja could only tease himself with a bitter smile. Boy, that old man who called himself Ah Wang is not simple. Li Yang knew that there was no one around now, so she began to talk to Nangongja. Indeed, Ah Wang is a bit strange. Let's not talk about people cultivating inner strength. After so long, I haven't seen anyone recognize my cultivation system. Most people think that it's because I practice a secret technique. But in essence, internal force and chakra are extremely different. Nangongja also expressed his doubts. Because to be honest, internal force has really reached the edge of being lost in the ninja world. But in such a small place, he met such an old man who even knew a lot of secrets about internal force that he didn't know. Did he also practice internal force? Li Yang suddenly raised such a possibility. No, there is no internal force. I didn't notice any internal force in Ah Wang's body, not to mention internal force, I didn't even notice a little bit of internal force. At first he quickly approached me, but now I think about it carefully. It's a skill that relies purely on physical force. As long as you practice hard, it's possible to do it. Nangongja said his own judgment. What this person said about being possessed by the devil, is it really such a dangerous thing? Although I have been in contact with people who practice internal force, I still don't know anything about such a secret. Li Yang has been paying attention to the conversation between Nangongja and Ah Wang. The so-called bedevilment was truly something that people had never heard of before. Possession of the devil does exist. Ruru once told me about it. But she didn't say clearly what it means to be possessed by the devil. The situation that Ah Wang told me, I also compared it to myself, and there is an 80% possibility that it is true. Nangongja can only speak his thoughts truthfully. The feeling of the body can't be faked. So, we can only put all our hope in the hands of this person who doesn't have much confidence. Li Yang suddenly felt a little, how to say it? She lost the sense of security of life. We have no choice. Nangongja could only choke out such a sentence in the end. Whether it's the devil or the sword energy, Nangongja is almost at the stage where he can use it, but he can't understand it at all. And Ah Wang, no matter how much he doesn't trust him. For life, for more possibilities, he can only rely on Ah Wang's character and medical skills. Nangongja and Li Yang's conversation ended. Li Yang fell asleep again and Nangongja leaned on the bed, waiting for Mashiro to bring the medicine. Gong gong. Mashiro pushed the door and came in with some bandages and a large bowl of ointment. Take off your shirt, I'll apply the ointment for you. Okay. Nangongja heard Mashiro's words, agreed and took off his shirt. With his back facing Mashiro, it was convenient for Mashiro to apply the ointment. Looking at the many scars on Nangongja's back, some were very new and some seemed to be a bit old. Mashiro has seen it many times. Even when applying the ointment, his hands have touched these scars more than once. But whether it was before or now, Mashiro would feel some sourness in his heart. These years, this boy who was only a little older than him. In the ninja's environment, which was almost full of killing and blood, Nangongja really suffered a lot. Even now, Nangongja still suffered such pain. These years it's been hard on you. Mashiro said very softly, but Nangongja still heard it. He just shook his head. Some things you just have to get used to it. Chapter 50. In the medicine room the smoke was lingering. The faint smell of herbs, accompanied by the rising wisps of sandalwood, went into people's noses all the time. Nangongja was soaking in a huge bathtub at the moment. All the major acupoints on his body were pierced with golden needles that trembled as Nangongja's muscles contracted. In order to stabilize Nangongja's physical strength and sword chi, Ah Wang had been adjusting Nangongja's body with medicinal baths and acupuncture for the past few days. Because the time was short, the effect was unknown. But every time Nangongja lay in the bathtub, the feeling was very uncomfortable. Because there was a stove under the bathtub with a raging flame burning all the time. It was heating the bathtub. What Nangongja was going through right now was an ancient punishment for killing someone. Fortunately, Nangongja's physique was very strong, and Ah Wang had been calculating the time of the medicinal bath according to Nangongja's limit. So for the time being, Nangongja just felt uncomfortable. Oh. It has been several days. I don't know how Ah Wang is going to control the sword chi in my body. Nangongja had been at Ah Wang's mercy for the past few days. It could be said that he was ravaged to a certain extent. After the torturous medicinal bath, Nangongja lay on a bamboo bed on the side. When Ah Wang was about to continue the acupuncture, he raised his doubts. Ah Wang ignored Nangongja and just looked at the golden needles in his hand. He took out a few particularly long golden needles and soaked them in a bottle of medicinal liquid. Then he walked to Nangongja with the golden needles. Lie down, Ah Wang said. Nangongja lay down on the bed, but he still turned his head, wanting to get an answer. Seeing that Nangongja would not give up until he achieved his goal, Ah Wang began to tell Nangongja his treatment plan. Sword chi is actually a double-edged sword. If you use it well, not only can your strength increase, but you can also use the characteristics of sword chi to put yourself in an indescribable fighting state. You can fully exert your ability. Nangongja thought about it and found it was true. Although Nangongja's emotions would become a little off after using sword chi, he could feel that his swordsmanship and sword chi were extremely compatible during the real battle. Furthermore, his ears were sharp and his eyes were sharp. When he carefully sensed it, he could even feel a slight coolness in his mind, allowing him to maintain a strange calmness. Therefore, I have 3 treatment plans here. Upper, middle and lower. The first one is the worst. Use acupuncture, medicinal baths, and many other methods to guide the sword chi out of your body. In this way you will naturally lose your foundation and collapse. But this will greatly damage your muscles and veins. Even if you rely on the strong self-healing ability of your internal force, there will be a long period of weakness. At the very least it will be counted in years. Take into account that you are a ninja. It is too dangerous to lose the ability to protect yourself, so this is the worst. The second one is the worst. I can weaken the sword chi in your body to the greatest extent, and maintain it in a relatively stable state. You have to come to me regularly to guide the sword chi out of your body. Of course, I can also give you the method as long as you find a qualified medical ninja, it can also be done. However, if you do that, your inner strength won't grow any further. Because every strand of internal force you cultivate will be assimilated by the sword chi, and in order to prevent the sword chi from growing, you have to guide the sword chi out of your body. If this is repeated, your internal force will not grow. The third one is the best. The great Tao is 50 and heaven is 49. Naturally, it still contains a glimmer of vitality. Internal force and sword chi come from the same source, but their natures are completely opposite. Everything in the world is just yin and yang. If you can adjust the ratio of internal force and sword chi, mix the two, you have me, I have you. His inner strength had become more aggressive, and his sword chi had become more neutral. Then you will have an extremely terrifying development potential. However, this method is also extremely dangerous, because you will be on the verge of becoming a demon at all times. If you are not careful, you will fall deep into the demon's den and be unable to extricate yourself. And this method is also the one that I can use the least. You can only rely on your feelings to reconcile the two. In your current form, your sword chi still needs to be transformed more. And more sword chi represents that you are closer to the abyss of becoming a demon. So, although I said that there are 3 strategies, the best, the middle, and the worst, but each method has its drawbacks. No one can have the best of both worlds. In fact, the premise of these methods has not been achieved. You still need to strengthen your body and spirit. Let your mastery of internal force and sword chi increase. Truly understand your power and not only know half of it and can only apply it. What I can do is to guide you. The only one who can really cure you is yourself. Wang finished his long speech. But the amount of information contained in it made Nangongji's head buzz. None of the 3 methods was actually a cure. The worst and middle strategies were only treating the symptoms and not the root cause. They temporarily alleviated the crisis of becoming a demon. But they did not really solve the problem of becoming a demon. Not to mention the best strategy, that was to gamble with one's life. To see if one could really reconcile the 2 forces. It sounded like it was just to maintain the balance between the 2. But how long has it been since ancient times? How long had the internal energy existed? Although there were no clear records, it must have been hundreds and thousands of years. During this long period of time, how could there not be many geniuses born? But the system of internal force was still declining. Even the important treatment method of becoming a demon was not passed down. That proved that the so-called best strategy was actually just an idealized theory. It was not certain whether it would work. So these 3 strategies. In terms of benefits, the best strategy was naturally the biggest. But in terms of safety, the worst strategy was the safest. There was a period of weakness in exchange for his life. It was not a loss. But Nangongja was now in the stage of adolescence. Years of recuperation was unbearable for Nangongja. A ninja without strength, could he still be a ninja? Moreover, before becoming a ninja, Nangongja was also a swordsman. A sword would rather break than bend. This kind of sharpness, was always hidden in the depths of Nangongja's heart. Nangongja's definition of himself was always a swordsman. There were some things that a ninja could do. But as a swordsman, Nangongja did not allow himself to do so. Chapter 51. Nangongja looked at the black sword beside him. The black sword's jagged surface reflected the light from time to time. Awang, I am a ninja and I am also a person who cultivates internal strength. But before that, I was a swordsman. Although today the swordsman group has almost been abandoned by history. But I still believe that I am a swordsman. Ants drag out their lives, but swordsmen would rather die. Of the 3 plans you gave me, the worst one is actually the least dangerous one. But I still don't want to choose it. As a swordsman, my will and the long sword in my hand don't allow me to live like this. So I choose the 3rd plan. No matter if I live or die, I won't live in vain, right? After Nangongja said these words, he suddenly felt his whole body and spirit relax a lot. Awang took a look at Nangongja and slowly shook his head. He slowly stroked his snow-white beard with his withered hand. Ah, you swordsmen are all so stubborn. But this is right. Swordsmen should be like this. Looking at Awang's laughing appearance, Nangongja lost his composure for a moment. Awang always had the appearance of a humble old man in front of Nangongja. But at this moment, when Awang was laughing, Nangongja could vaguely see the figure of a frivolous youth. Who in the world isn't frivolous? Awang's laughter slowly faded, his pair of dim yellow eyes slowly covered with a layer of mist. Not only swordsmen. Even swordswomen used a sword. That's why I became like this. Awang slowly wiped a drop of turbid tear from the corner of his eye. I think you have been curious more than once. How can an old man like me, who has never cultivated internal strength, be so familiar with the cultivation system of internal strength? After all, I don't have any signs of cultivating internal strength, right? Nangongja was stumped by the question because he and Li Yang were indeed in a dilemma over this issue. Seeing Nangongja like this, how could Awang not understand clearly in his heart? My family has been studying medicine for generations. Every time we reach adulthood, the successor of our family will travel to various countries and treat illnesses for free to hone his medical skills. It was the same for me. I was just 16 that year. I was young and frivolous and did many ridiculous things. I also got to know a lot of people that I will never forget. One day, I was still on my way when I found a young girl who had fainted on the side of the road. At that time, the world was not stable, and the Shinobi World War was on the verge of breaking out. A young girl is different from me. After all, I have medical skills. At that time, there weren't any medical ninjas, so it was mainly doctors like me who treated them. So my life won't be in any danger. It was too dangerous for women in that era where demons danced wildly. So I went to her side and used first aid to save the young girl. So I took her with me. After a long time, she must have developed feelings for me. Her name is Yun. Like you, she is a cultivator of internal energy. But she is not the same as you because her strength is very ordinary. The shinobi world was in turmoil, so we naturally encountered a lot of dangerous situations. I had no strength, so Yun taught me a set of body techniques in order to give me some strength to protect myself. It's the set you saw before. But that's because I didn't practice it well, and my ability to escape was just ordinary. So, many times Yun secretly began to use sword energy to protect the safety of the two of us. After a day of accumulation, the proportion of sword energy in Yun's body became heavier and heavier. When I noticed it, Yun was already possessed by the devil. At that time, Yun was extremely ruthless when dealing with the enemy. That kind of Yun was no longer the Yun I knew. Yun told me some things about internal energy and sword energy from time to time. So I relied on my family's golden needle tribulation method to seal the sword energy in Yun's body. So Yun's consciousness returned to normal. I told Yun that I could draw out all of her sword energy. In this way I could save her. But Yun still refused. Yun was also a swordsman. Just like you, a stubborn and proud swordsman. You can abandon anything, but you are never willing to abandon your pride. After that, Yun was completely possessed by the devil. It was me who personally sent Yun away. This is the pain of my life. That's why I wanted to help you when I saw you. In my life I can't forget Yun. I thought if I can save you. When I saw Yun in the underworld, I could tell her that the internal energy is not gone. The swordsman also did not disappear. Because I tried my best to save her, Junior. When Wang said the last part, the tears on his face couldn't stop flowing. But Wang seemed to be unaware, just blindly indulging in his story and feelings. Who doesn't hurt in the world? How could everyone not have some sorrowful feelings? Just like Wang and Yun's past. Just like Nangongja and Mashiro now. Even, just like Nangongja and Nangongro's feelings. After a long time, Wang finally broke free from his sad mood. Young man, I've made a fool of myself. Wang's old face showed a free and easy smile. These old things have been buried in my heart for a long time. Suddenly saying it out loud made me forget myself to this extent. But it's fortunate. I met you. If you can live, I have one less regret. Looking at Wang, Nangongja suddenly felt a sense of emotion lingering in his heart. If he grew old, would he be able to recount the past and tell others about it with relief and carefreeness? Sorry. Nangongja suddenly said, I did doubt your motives before. After all, the internal energy is very important. I have to be careful. It's okay. Wang waved his hand to show that he could understand. The two didn't say anything more, and Wang quickly finished inserting the needles on Nangong's back. There weren't many needles on Nangong's back, but they were all along the spine. Each needle was very long, not only poking into the flesh. Under Wang's superb skills, these golden needles went deep into the spinal cord. Some medicinal liquid on the golden needles was injected into Nangong's spine through the guidance of the golden needles. These medicinal liquids were all drugs to promote blood production and increase physical strength. In this way, it stimulated Nangong's body to recover, and at the same time, stimulated the operation of the internal energy. Chapter 52. In this way, Nangongja spent every day in the medicinal bath and acupuncture treatment. Slowly, the effects of the medicine came into play. Nangongja's physical fitness began to improve steadily. Not only strength but also flexibility, cell activity, and other indicators began to rise. Originally, Nangongja mainly relied on brute force to defeat 10 people. At the same time, he also used some speed-type sword techniques. However, the skill-based sword skills had always been a shortcoming for Nangongja, because Nangongja did not start practicing from a young age. At the age of 11 or 12, although his muscles and bones were not completely shaped, he was still not as flexible as those who started practicing since childhood. The medicinal bath prepared by Wang and the medicinal liquid on the golden needles during acupuncture had greatly stimulated Nangongja's tendons, meridians, and bones that had already been shaped. It made up for Nangongja's original shortcomings. Moreover, Wang seemed to have developed a prescription to balance his internal strength and sword energy. In the past few days, Nangongja's internal strength and sword energy had reached a balance. Without using internal strength and sword energy, Nangongja's signs of being possessed by the devil had stabilized after using the medicinal bath. Young man, in the past few days your physical condition has generally stabilized, right? Wang asked after removing the needles from Nangongja. Thanks to Wang's tireless efforts in recuperating my body these days, I am indeed much better. Moreover, my mental state is not as irritable as before. Nangongja sat up from the bamboo bed, picked up his clothes on the stool next to him and put them on. After feeling his physical condition, he answered Wang's question. Very good, then this will be the last acupuncture treatment I will give you. Wang nodded and put away the golden needle in his hand. The last time? Nangongja was suddenly a little confused. Was Wang going to change the treatment method? What do you mean? Nangongja asked. I've already done all that I can with my medical skills. The effects of those medicinal baths and liquids have already reached their limits. So there's no point for you to stay here. Wang stroked his beard and said indifferently. So, whether or not I can break free from this demonic state will depend on my own luck? Nangongja mumbled to himself. Then Nangongja supported himself on the bamboo bed and stood up. He bowed deeply to Wang. Wang didn't stop Nangongja. He just looked at Nangongja and waited for Nangongja to say something. Thank you, sir. Actually, you and I are not related, but sir has been very considerate of me. If it weren't for teacher stopping me when I was about to leave, persuading me with reason and emotion, and even explaining the dangers of becoming a demon for me, I wouldn't have been able to escape. My life and my relationship with Mashiro would have been in an unsalvageable situation. Looking at Nangongja's current state, Wang didn't say anything. But his eyes were filled with emotions. If Yun-er didn't die early, perhaps Wang would have his own children. Presumably he would have a grandson as old as Nangongja, right? Young man, actually, I have a presumptuous request. After hesitating for a long time, Wang finally opened his mouth. You're my savior. If you need any help, I'll naturally help. There's no need to say any presumptuous request. Nangongja heard Wang's words and quickly agreed. I've been studying medicine all my life, so I've long been open to life and death. Life and death is just a way of living, and I'm not that stubborn. But after all, I'm still living in this world, and there are some things that I can't let go of. Wang turned around and opened a window in the medicine hut. In the courtyard, Mashiro was playing with Ling-er. Nangongja followed Wang's line of sight and saw Ling-er. You're saying? Nangongja already had some guesses in his heart. That's right. Actually, my time is almost up. At most, I can only struggle at death's door for 1 or 2 years. Although he was clearly talking about his own life and death, Wang didn't seem to be the least bit strange. Instead, it was as if he was talking about someone else's matter. So, you hope that I can take care of Ling-er? Nangongja roughly guessed Wang's meaning. Ling-er and I don't have any blood relations. Back then, I came to this village to practice medicine. There's a huge outbreak of plague here. 9 out of 10 houses are empty and many people have died. The rest of the people also ran away. When I passed by, I wanted to collect some samples to study the characteristics of this plague. I wanted to use my medical skills to eliminate the source of the plague and make this place habitable again. However, when I walked to the door of Ling Er's old house, I heard a burst of baby crying. Ling Er's house wasn't in the densely populated part of the village. Instead, it was a bit remote. So when the people in the village fled, they didn't find that there was a baby in this house. So I brought Ling Er out. I don't know what her real name is, but I saw a string of bells on her hand, so I called her Ling Er. Over the years, Ling Er is really like my granddaughter. But the ninja world has always been turbulent. When I was still here, the people of various countries would give me a little face. Plus, the strategic value of this village is not great, so Ling Er can have a relatively safe living environment. But if I leave, I'm really worried about Ling Er's safety. You're a woodleaf ninja, and your strength is also very outstanding. I hope I can entrust Ling Er to you and let you take good care of her. When talking about his own life and death, Wang was very indifferent, but when he talked about his concern for Ling Er, his love overflowed. The love and care in each of his fists was truly touching. You can rest assured that Ling Er is your granddaughter. These days, whether it's me or Mashiro, we've been infected by Ling Er's naive kindness, and we treat her as our own sister. Even without your entrustment, we will do our best to protect Ling Er. When Wang heard Nangongji's words, his whole person seemed to have been relieved of a heavy burden and relaxed a lot. With your words, I'm relieved. These years, Ling Er has accompanied me to treat patients, and can be regarded as a beginner in medical skills. I'll tidy up the books and entrust them to Ling Er. It can be regarded as a continuation of our lineage. Let Ling Er also have some skills to eat. After that, Wang ignored Nangongji. He turned around and began to rummage through the boxes and cabinets to organize the medical books. It was such an ordinary scene, but Nangongji didn't know why his heart ached. Chapter 53. After a few days, Nangongji packed his luggage and took Mashiro and Ling Er on a long journey. He didn't know what Wang told Ling Er, but when Ling Er left, she was very excited. She was like a primary school student who knew she was going on an outing, pure and happy. But how could a child's mood not be fluctuating? When Nangongji and the others walked for about half a day, it was already close to noon. They stopped and prepared to cook. At the same time, they were brewing a medicinal soup for Nangongji to maintain the balance of his internal energy. I don't know if Grandpa has eaten lunch. Looking at the burning firewood, Ling Er suddenly muttered to herself. Then his expression became somewhat gloomy. Don't worry, before we left, didn't we ask the neighbor next door to take care of Wang? There was a family next door to Wang's medicinal hut. This family had always relied on providing Wang with some of their own herbs to earn some extra money. Therefore, their relationship with Wang was very good. The neighbor next door also knew that Ling Er couldn't cook because she was leaving. The two families agreed to bring a portion for Wang when they cooked. I know, Ling Er nodded, but she was still a little unhappy. She held a piece of paper in her hand and flipped the firewood under the stove from time to time. I miss Grandpa a little. When she said this, Ling Er's eyes were obviously covered with a layer of mist. It looked like tears were about to gather and fall to the ground. Ling Er. Big Brother saw a little white rabbit. Do you want to go catch it with Big Brother? Seeing Ling Er like this, Nangongji didn't feel good in his heart. Therefore, he wanted to divert Ling Er's attention and not wallow in sadness. Rabbit? Ling Er raised her head, her eyes flashing with curiosity and a fresh light. Seeing Ling Er's appearance, Nangongji finally let out a sigh of relief. He turned his head and gave Mashiro a look, indicating that he should bring Mashiro out for a walk. Then he took out a fireworks stick from his back and handed it to Mashiro. I don't feel very good about this place. There might be some trouble. This is for you. If anything happens, use it to inform me. When everyone decided to rest, Nangongji carefully observed the surrounding environment. There was a dense forest, tall trees, and a few steep hills. Such a place was simply a natural bandit's nest. However, it was obvious that Mashiro and Ling Er did not have much energy left to travel, and he needed the medicine to maintain the balance of his internal energy. Therefore he stopped here. But since he was going to take Ling Er out to relax, he naturally had to be fully prepared. Alright, I got it. I'll be careful. Looking at Ling Er's appearance, I felt my heart ache. But he couldn't bear to tell her about Wang's condition. He could only take it one step at a time. You can show her around. Nangongja nodded and walked to Ling Er's side. He took Ling Er's hand and squatted beside her. Let's go, big brother will bring you to catch a little rabbit. Then we raised it so that Ling Er could play with it every day. What do you think? Nangongja said gently. Ling Er heard Nangongja's voice and suggestion. At that moment she didn't have many thoughts in her heart. She was only interested in Nangongja's suggestion of raising a rabbit. Ling Er nodded vigorously, indicating that she agreed. Alright, let's go. Nangongja stood up. Say goodbye to Mishiro Jejia. Goodbye, Mishiro Jejia. We'll come back later to bring you a little rabbit. Ling Er obediently said goodbye to Mishiro, then pulled Nangongja and ran forward. Looking at Nangongja being pulled by Ling Er, Mishiro couldn't help but smile. Maigong has also changed. The first time I saw Maigong. Although Maigong didn't show me a cold face, the estrangement that came from the bottom of her heart was obvious. Now Maigong can be so gentle to Ling Er and me. She has indeed improved a lot. Mishiro muttered to herself as she turned around. She took care of the stove. Nangongja and Ling Er also began to look for rabbits in the forest. Nangongja wasn't just spouting nonsense about the rabbit. He really did find traces of the rabbit. That was why he decided to bring Ling Er out. Otherwise, if they couldn't find the rabbit, wouldn't it be so awkward and annoy the little girl? Nangongja was now using a series of chasing techniques that he learned from White Fang to catch rabbits. If White Fang knew about this, he might be so angry that he stomped his feet. This way is definitely correct. Nangongja laid on the ground and carefully observed for a long time. Finally he stood up and pointed in a direction. Brother. Ling Er rolled her eyes and looked at Nangongja. This is the 11th time you changed directions. Nangongja was a little embarrassed by Ling Er's stare. He quickly patted his chest and said, Don't worry, it's definitely correct this time. In less than 3 minutes we will definitely find it. At this moment, the sound of animals stepping on the ground suddenly came from the surroundings. A rabbit scurried out in an instant, leaving behind only its back and disappearing. The direction it disappeared in was the opposite of where Nangongja pointed. Ling Er looked at Nangongja with a face full of disappointment. Then he chased after the rabbit that had just scurried out. Ling Er, slow down. The terrain here is complicated. Don't run too fast. Nangongja chased behind Ling Er and shouted loudly. The rabbit was frightened and ran even faster. As for Ling Er, now that she was focused on catching the rabbit, how could she have the time to care about what Nangongja said? The two of them chased the rabbit further and further away. Suddenly Nangongja's nose twitched a few times. The smell, it was blood. Moreover, it was not just the blood of a few people. At least 40 to 50 people had been killed to create such a strong stench. Nangongja suddenly sped up and hugged Ling Er in his arms. He covered Ling Er's mouth to prevent her from making a sound. Ling Er, don't talk, listen to me. Nangongja put his mouth close to Ling Er's ear and said in a very soft but clear voice. Ling Er nodded and Nangongja let go of Ling Er. A lot of people died in front, at least 40 to 50 people. I can already smell the blood. This place is very dangerous now. So I will send you to Mishiro's sister first. You stay with Mishiro's sister. Then I will go and check. After saying that, Nangongja carried Ling Er. They quickly returned to Mishiro's place. Mishiro, a lot of people died in this area. I will go and take a look. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.